Good evening, Hampstead. Welcome you to our regular school board meeting on Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 at approximately 7:01 p.m. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. And Melissa, would you do the roll call, please?
We have Carl Hubner.
Here.
Jason Giard.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Megan Malcolm. Here. Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
Pinkerton Student Liaison Shannon Caffell.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools Bob Thompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
I'd like to go ahead and ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Board members, in your package you have meeting minutes from November 22nd regular meeting. I'd like to take a minute to take a look at those and looking for a motion to accept.
I'd like to just point something out. I just noticed a typo that I made, so I'll correct it on the meeting minutes. It says that Chairman Smith presented minutes from November 8th, but then the motion reads that it was for October 25th, 2022 meeting minutes, so I'll just make that change to November 8th in the motion.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the regular meeting on November 22nd, 2022.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Any discussions, comments? All approved, raise your hand.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you, Dr. Abner. All right. And Melissa, do we have any public comments?
No, we do not tonight.
Awesome. All right. Next, we're moving on to our school highlights with our HMS principal, Ms. Newberry.
Good evening, everyone. We have some excellent highlights as usual, so I will try to be quick because it's not very long meeting ahead of us. We had our Veterans Day assembly last month. That was, again, another assembly really student-led. Our Veterans Day Assembly student-led, Mrs. Wolf and her 8th grade RTI group leadership. RTI has really done a fantastic job this year working on different projects, and this was one of them. We had the assembly with lots of guests welcoming and recognizing veterans with lots of appreciation, and also a breakfast after that. It went really well. We had our end of Q1 Hawk Awards, where students were recognized in each grade level from their teams of teachers as well as from Unified Arts for doing fantastic things in Q1. I listed all the students there for you to see. That was another great assembly. Not student-led at the beginning, but at the end, our ABC Club had a great activity and challenge, so the award winners and the teachers who presented them got to compete against each other. And that was a lot of fun. The kids were really great. Q1 has closed. As you know, what we rolled out new this year, and hopefully parents at home have had a chance to take a look at it. I don't know if the board's received any feedback, but we went to an all online report card. So the report card is right through the parent portal in Power School. We sent out a bunch of communication about it. We can see that a lot of parents haven't opened it, but we're really hoping to continue to do it this way so that we're not mailing home report cards to all the families. So everyone, students and parents, can see that report card through the Power School portal. I put a little food pantry update in here. I know you're aware of the project where the food pantry, that's kind of off in the opposite corner of our parking lot, is there. We have some kids working, you can see behind me, and doing a food drive right now, collecting food for that food pantry and continuing to work so that there's awareness within the school about food insecurity, but also they're helping to stock that food pantry for people who are in need. And that's continued to be a really awesome project that started last spring. The food being collected is so that all grade levels who collect food, which everyone is in pretty good shape, although fifth grade has done a dynamic job, but all grade levels are able to compete in the giving games. So that's the next project that that leadership group has done, a couple of RTIs working together. They are creating games out of cardboard. And during the Unified Arts on the day before our holiday break, all students are going to get to go into the gym and play the games that our 8th grade students created. So really looking forward to seeing that. And lastly, I did an entry plan update, just kind of where we're at. It's been a busy fall. It's hard to believe that we're in December already. I'm not sure where it went. It was great to reflect back on that entry plan and the things that I said I intended to do, and have certainly been busy at it, and can see that there's more to do, which is fine. I've worked feeling really good about having gotten to know the staff. We have a great staff here, and I've had conversations with all of them and trying to get into classrooms as much as possible on a regular basis. So that's been really fun to get to know them. And also working on the scheduling committee. We've just met again today. We're hoping after the new year to have a couple of new schedules to really pour over and decide on for next year. That work has been hard work, but it's going well. And also our MTSS work is underway. So both of those committees have started and have done some great work, but have a lot of work still to do. I've been working to get to know the students, trying to get into all the advisories. My advisory goal of getting into all of them by, I think I said November 15th, was lofty. But as much as I can, I get into advisory. I was trying to save it for our Wednesday advisory is longer, when they're usually doing an activity, or it's more than just kind of a good morning, hello, and attendance. But there's not enough Wednesdays to get into them all. So I'm just trying to pop around and just see kids. I think I've probably mentioned this. One of the hardest things coming to a new school for me was not knowing all of the kids' names. I'm working hard at learning names. It'll take me some time, but I'm getting there. And then just communication with the Hempstead community, offering the principal coffee, and certainly going to do that, continue to do that. What I haven't had a lot of time to do is to get out to the different groups. I've had communications with a lot of the groups. Hampstead has so many different groups that do amazing things. So I've had some communication with the leaders of those groups, but hoping to get to some meetings. I've been to PTSA, but just some of the other civic organizations in town. And the one other thing I will just note that I didn't put in here, but I feel like I should brag about, is we did have a fire drill last week. And I sent a communication home because it wasn't a normal one. So we had fire department here, all was fine, but it was great to have the fire department be able to come and be a part of the drill, because that's not necessarily common for us. And the chief at the end was just so complimentary of how well our students and staff did in the fire drill, and they do an amazing job. So it's just kind of a proud moment I wanted to highlight. They did a great job. That's my report.
Thank you. Go on here. Board members, any questions for Ms. Miller? I'll comment. One comment I have is it was really great to see the kids last month stepping up and actually playing a leadership role, and how they organized Veterans Day celebration. And I know they're doing more than just that, so definitely hats off to you and the leadership team here to get the kids involved in actually leading it all, organizing it, planning it, executing it. So I think the feedback from parents that I know has been very positive on that. So
great. I think sometimes we forget that middle schoolers are capable of these things, especially our older middle schoolers, and especially our Hampstead kids are just amazing, and they have embraced it. And I've been beyond impressed with the work that they've done, and really big kudos to Mrs. Wolf, who's kind of let that go, gotten them running, and it's been fun to watch, and just trying to also incorporate as many students. So it's not the same students all the time, but
Right.
Getting the leadership throughout the building. And as much as, my student principal leadership team is 5th through 8th grade. So we have leaders in every grade level, but just continuing to harness that leadership skill. And then they'll go to Pinkerton with just some great skills under their belts. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah, well, thank you. My only question, and not something we got to answer tonight, but it's more of involving kids in the community. If there's any plans for more of that, because I think that's something that I've heard from community members is, that, some of the stories I hear back in the day, but that the kids would, be involved in the different historical society, or they do something with the select board and, other things. So I don't know if there's anything on the radar for that, but just something to think about. Is something that, I think we should encourage more, is having involved in the community.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to work with my staff on that. I think the community involvement has happened here so far, helping with the senior breakfast and some of the other events that have happened here. But I think it's a great point that there are things out there for us to be a part of. So I think that's a great goal for us to start to work on now that we're getting back to normal.
I think you'll hear that if you're, when you're able to get out there to the different groups, is they are looking for, how to get involved more.
Yeah.
Right. And that's both ways. So definitely encourage that.
Great.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I just wanted to give you a comment on the online report cards. The only thing I saw was people were having a hard time getting into it, which you probably have gotten. You or Joe have probably gotten.
Yes,
about
we
that.
did. We have had a couple of glitches. Power School is an interesting program in that there's all these little back end pieces, and it will work for one and not we were having a hard time finding rhyme or reason, but Joe's been great, and we have an administrative assistant who's been really on it when there have been issues, fixing them quickly. But certainly, if you hear of any that they haven't reached out to us, please make sure that they do, because we will fix it as quickly as possible. But it's a funky thing, and the first time you roll something like this out, it's never perfect, but hopefully people have enjoyed it.
Thank you. Good point. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is our Pinkerton student liaison, Shannon. So if you want to give us updates.
Yeah. Okay. The Air Force JROTC competed in a drill last month and won 5 out of 7 team events, putting them in first place. So congrats to Colonel Stedman and his whole crew. The past few weeks, students have been getting out of the classrooms in their U.S. history classes and took part in an Ellis Island simulation, where they were able to recreate many of what our ancestors went through, since we're learning about different social groups. The sophomore semi-formal was this past Saturday. It was jam-packed, sold out like usual. I saw that a lot of the kids had a lot of fun. The Pinkerton players performed Clue at what I was told, a beyond high school level. I wish I went to go see it for myself. The class of 2024 hosted a movie night in the Stockbridge Theater. We watched Mean Girls and raised funds for events that we're going to have this year. There were many students selected to be part of the New Hampshire All-State Choir and Bands. Last night was the Winter Instrumental Concert, and Thursday night at 7 in the theater is the Choral and Bell Choir Concert. Students went on a scavenger hunt to explore the variety of CTE classes that we're blessed to have at Pinkerton. And last week was the Pinkerton Day of Giving, where we raised over $37,000 for all aspects of Pinkerton, including $2,700 for families in transition. The Board of Trustees also donated $14,273 to add to our total. I think that's all I got.
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Board members, any questions for Shannon?
No, I heard about that scavenger hunt. My daughter was part of that and said it was a blast.
Yeah.
No, I'm kind of wishing I wouldn't saw Mean Girls. I think my daughters would have loved it. So, but that's awesome. You all are doing a lot of those events. So it's great to see it all happening. So thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to move on to current business. So I'll introduce, but turn over to Ms. Thompson really quickly here. We are going to meet with the team from NHSAA on the school facilities report. So we're definitely interested in looking forward to this update. But Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, so last spring, the board approved the newly developed Hsd Strategic Plan. There's 5 priority areas in that plan. And priority 5 really is the focus of tonight's presentation, and that is to design learning environments to match our educational philosophies. And one of the activities stated in the strategic plan was to conduct a comprehensive facility study for both school buildings. And the goal of the study would include determine current space utilization and how we can create greater efficiencies for future use, understand the current impact that the physical environment has on the instructional outcomes, and begin long-term planning for future needs. So after the approval of the strategic plan, I reached out to the New Hampshire School Administrators Association, and we created a partnership where the last few months have been dedicated to a very comprehensive facility study. They've been on site several times, have done a lot of work, and tonight is the culmination of that. You have the final report in front of you. And so at this time, I'd like to present the 3 contributors to the facilities report, Dr. Carl Ladd, Mr. Keith Burke, and Mr. Jerry Frew. And at this time, I will turn the presentation over to them. Yes, please.
Good evening. As Bob said, my name is Carl Ladd. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. We were contracted to provide an objective facilities study review. We were given all of the information that you folks have had, the previous studies that you've had, all of the materials around your strategic plan. I do want to say right up from the front how amazing your administrative team is. The principals, the facilities director, Bob, Jeff, everyone has been incredibly welcoming and worked very hard to provide us with whatever information that we needed when we needed it. So I want to give them a big thank you for that. As you know, as you can tell, you've had the report for a couple of weeks now. It's broken up into 3 parts. The first part is really just the introduction and the scope. And then part 2 dives into the demographics and the enrollment projections. And then part 3 is really focused on the facilities themselves. We're going to kind of break the report up a little bit, primarily because my voice isn't going to hold out for the whole evening. So I'm going to go do part 1 and part 3, and Mr. Burke is going to cover part 2, all of the demographics. So within the report, there is a timeline and the scope of work that we provided for you. And we did review the previous studies that were done, but after we came and visited, because I wanted to make sure that I came and saw the facility unbiased by previous reports, previous studies, even what you folks have been talking about as far as your building project, so that we would really just look at the facilities and come up with our own conclusions. And then we reviewed the materials after we came and saw, visited, walked through the buildings, met with the staffs, and had a better idea of what we were seeing. And it was interesting that the previous facility studies really ended up mirroring what we are presenting for you tonight. So I think, if nothing else, that proves that there's at least consistency in the work that we've been doing. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Keith, and he's going to go through part 2, which is an overview of the school district, and then the demographic pieces.
Good evening. Just a couple of comments about New Hampshire school populations in general. Over the last 20 years, New Hampshire has lost approximately 1% of their student population. That's the bad news, or the news that would affect the schools as they are today. However, The Office of Energy and Planning has projected that school populations, particularly in this area, southern tier and the eastern area, will start to stabilize and actually increase slightly. The north is a slightly different case. We'll probably see continued reduction in student populations in the north. I'm only bringing this up is that their work and their projections do support the projections that we've put forward tonight. So the first, just go through our process. Starting on page 4. The first thing we take a look at is the school enrollment as a percentage of town population. What this tells us is that what is happening is the number of people who are having children and how large the families are in any given town. Now, over the last 20 years, that has changed dramatically. When my children were in school, the population was increasing, and that was created by what they called, as I'm a baby boomer, the baby boom echo. The baby boomers were having a lot of kids, and that created a spike in population for the schools. That's no longer the case. If you just look around, and even with your own experiences, you'll notice that maybe you and I'm sure your friends are having fewer children than your parents did. Certainly my grandmother had 13 children. My family was 5. I have 1. So it starts to drop off. So as we can see that with the comparison of the town populations and the school populations, it's pretty much about what we expected. It is slowly diminished. Then we do a school enrollment. The next thing is just a chart showing how that is, depicting that. Page 6. Page 6 shows the number of births, the town population, and births as a percent of the district population. That has been increasing. But I want me caution you on this one. In 2021, you'll note that you had 76 births recorded for Hampstead. Now, the way that this is done is it doesn't matter where they're born as long as the mother specifies that their place of residence is Hampstead. So if they're born in Boston or Concord or wherever, it's still recorded as Hampstead. And those statistics come in. Statewide, there was a spike in population birth during 2021. And what they assume the reason for that is because of COVID. There was sort of a backup that people were putting off having families because of fear of COVID and also because of access to hospital. So after that had diminished, we started seeing a spike in births. What we're seeing now, and it's a little too early to tell because the reports are always lagging behind, that I believe, and also the Office of Energy and Planning believe, and the US Census believes, that that'll start leveling off again. We'll go back to pre-pandemic levels. On page 7, we've depicted the number of building permits that are issued. And you'll note that in 2005, 2006, you guys were pretty healthy here with building permits. Now, I have to point out that building permits don't necessarily translate directly in all cases to buildings. And depending upon the way the town reports it, you won't know whether the actual building had been created or not. But this gives you an indication of what might be happening in the towns. And you're starting to see a bit of a spike coming up in 2020. That's the latest data that we have. The Hampstead community profile is, there's probably no surprises in that for any of you. Just breaks down the population, the taxes, the housing. It's more reference information for you. We also take a look at the enrollment projections and the enrollment history. First, we look at the history, and you'll notice that we've been trending down, except for this past year. It looks like we're getting a slight uptick. You had 2 years, which was kind of surprising, that you had identical population. It happens every once in a while, but not very often. And that, on page 10, you'll see that the 771 population. Now remember, probably should preface this before, all this data is K through 4. We don't, K through 8. We don't take into consideration preschool. It's not part of it's not part of the study. We find that it's too difficult to predict preschool. And because you can control that to some degree, you can limit the number of preschool students you have. It doesn't play easily into our information. On page 12, that chart can be a little confusing, but it simply gives you a sense of the fluctuation of enrollment losses and gains. And you can see over a period of time, which won't surprise you, that you've had more losses than gains. On page 13, we show the births that have been attributed to Hampstead, and the baseline regression that examines the overall trend projects that the number of births will slightly increase over time. Again, kindergarten enrollment showing a projected increase using the baseline regression. Kindergarten replacement. This is always a tough one because what it's showing is that the number of people you're losing compared to the number of people you're gaining in kindergarten varies. And at one point it was right at the same point, and the last one we recorded, 2022, there was a bit of a gap, which you need to probably keep an eye on. Also, you also need to look at the relationship between kindergarten and grade 1. There isn't always a direct correlation. And again, on page 16, there's another chart which gives you some more information about the relationship between kindergarten, grade 1, and live births. When we do the forecasting, the projections are made using a grade progression ratio multiplied by the enrollment for the previous grade in the prior year. Kindergarten projections are an inverse operation since they're based on the grade estimate from the following year. Kindergarten's always been a tough one for us to try to project, and we found that probably works the best. We're looking at other algorithms right now that might give us more accurate data on kindergarten. After looking at all your stuff, looking at the things that we think are important, we believe that the 5-year average method is the best predictor of what's going to happen for Hampstead in the future. We use 3 different types of algorithms. One is 5-year average, one is 3-year weighted, and one is 1-year cohort. And they're all explained in the document which is which. The reason we pick the 5-year average is that one of the things we do once I do all the projections is I turn back the clock 10 years, drop the numbers into the projections, and see which one would have given us the closest, because I actually know what your numbers are. I say, well, okay, 5-year average in your case, when I turn back the clock 10 years, seemed to work the best. That's why we're saying it. However, we encourage you to watch this year to year, look at each of the numbers in each of the tables and each of the algorithms, which are all there for you, and make sure that the 5-year is staying more or less on target. The page 19 and page 20 show the 3-year weighted average projection and the 1-year cohort projections. And then they're followed with charts and graphs showing how close they come to one another. Clearly, we think that your population is going to increase. Office and Energy and Planning agree with us. We'll see if we're both right. I think that's pretty much it as far as the explanation of the forecasts and the projections, unless there's any questions.
Would you like us to hold off until the end for questions, or what would you prefer?
Why don't we take them as...
Okay. And board members, any questions about the numbers, about the methodology? I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Let me just go into, is there any reason, you were saying that you compare K and 8th grade, right? As what's 8th grade's leaving, K is coming in. Is there any reason why not comparing 1st and 8th grade? Because first, typically we see an increase of between kindergarten and 1st graders, right? Because not all kindergartners go to kindergarten here.
Right.
So is there a reason why you wouldn't compare 1st and 8th grade as a better comparison?
Because of all the times, I've kind of lost count in the number of studies that we've done. That is not ideal, but it seems to be the best predictor of all the different methods that we've used.
Okay. All right.
As I say, because kindergarten has become more of a standard now, we'll be able to look at the data from the state a little bit more carefully, and we probably in the future will alter the algorithm.
Okay. Yeah, I just out of, because like for Hsd, we're probably one of the last ones not to have full day kindergarten for everybody, right? So it's harder here because people will go other places. If we offered full day K, I think we'd get more, kids here. And what we usually see is an increase of 10%, 20% over what goes in kindergarten here.
Right.
So using the K to 8 kind of shifts what reality is for Hsd, while I get other districts probably makes more sense. The other question I have is, if I look at the number, I got to just pull the pages up here just out of curiosity. On one, okay. So if I'm looking at, and I have it as page 13, I think it's your page 15 or 16, which is the enrollment history that goes from 2013-14 to 22-23. It's figure 6.
I'm sorry, which one is it?
Figure 6. And I think it's your page
Figure
15 or
6.
16.
Okay.
On mine is page 13. My question is, for kindergarten for us in 22-23, let me know if you have it. I don't want to.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, so for kindergartners in 22-23 reality, we have 84 kindergartners there, right? But if I look at what you're suggesting on, I just had it here, on figure 14, you're suggesting our just get the exact numbers, our 84 kindergartners are going to become 74 first graders next year. So, and I understand this is all, methodology and it's, using different, but to see us dropping 10 students when typically we increase, is there any reason there, or is this because of the modeling and it just doesn't take into account?
Well, if you look at the figure 6 again and you do the diagonal, if you look at 13-14 kindergarten 78, and you also then look at the 8th graders, the first graders, it becomes 86. And those are real numbers.
Yep. So it increases.
It does increase. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Let me see. I know that I saw
I don't see anywhere where it decreases by that much, 10 students. I see the ones like 72 to 73. So I'm just questioning there. because again, typically we go up. We from kindergarten to first grade. We don't typically go down. You know, it's only one number. Everything else makes sense.
I guess the only thing I can say about that is, well, let's see.
Okay.
I mean, we'll see what happens, and based upon the algorithm, that's what it comes out to be.
Okay.
And again, none of these things are dead accurate.
Yep, I get it.
They're indicators, they're trends,
Yep.
and if it works, and I would encourage you to continue to look at these to make sure that the one we picked remains solid for you over a period of time. You may have to say, whoa, now we better, if we start looking at the 3-year weighted model, we're getting closer to where we are. Maybe we ought to look at those numbers for a couple of years.
Okay. Yeah. So again, looking at all the other ones, like first to second, second to third, they
Yeah.
all make sense. They all are pretty dead on.
And they
It's just
should.
that one is a glaring, like, I would argue we're not going to go down by 10. We're going to increase by 10 or 20. So I think it's a difference of like 30 students for next year. But
You may be right.
well, that's what we typically like, because we don't have enough room in our, and you probably heard this already, but that's why we typically turn away, like this year, we turned away another 2025.
Right.
So our 84 kindergartners are probably going to be that 100, 105 next year, not that number of 78 or so. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
I'm good. Anybody else?
These projections are basically off of what you've seen across the state, correct? Like,
Sorry.
these projections are based off of what you've seen across the state.
Well, no, the projections are based upon all your data. Now,
Okay.
we have data. I think we have the best database for enrollment anywhere, including at the State Department of Education.
Okay.
Our data goes back to 1990.
Okay.
And I look at that whole thing,
Yeah.
as long as I have the district in one piece through that period of time, and I look to see what's happened. But as you can imagine, all the districts have gone through pretty much what you've gone through. Big spikes, then drops.
Okay.
And now what we're seeing is in certain areas of the state, particularly in this area, the southern tier and the eastern tier, we're starting to see increases. We're not seeing those anywhere else. All the other studies that we've done, we're seeing decreases.
Okay.
Not dramatic, but certainly decreases at the rate, probably the average rate that you're seeing from the state is about 1.1% per year.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have another question, actually. All right, so I appreciate figure 16 really shows a lot of information for me, at least, where it shows that that increase that you're speaking about, which, if I'm reading this correctly, conservatively, we're going from about 800 this year, about 10 to 12% higher over the next 10 years, right? And then if we look at, and I'm looking at your 1-year average, that actually brings us up about 22% or so, 20%, right? Or actually, that's almost 30%.
That seemed a little extreme to me.
Yeah.
But we run them all to see where they are. Typically, I think you find that the projections usually run a little bit higher than lower overall. When things play out over a period of 10 years. The last study that was done, I looked at that after I was looking at that this morning, and I noted that in 22-23, the 5 through 8 projection was only off by 10 students, but the K through 4 was off by almost 100. So, you know, it's hard to figure.
Okay.
I mean, 10 students over a period of 10 years, that's pretty good. 100 isn't so good, but.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is if we did a little bit of a time machine here, right? And we were working with you 10 years ago, what would we see that you're pretty on target with your forecast?
You would see that they are within what I would call a reasonable margin of error.
Okay.
During those forecasts, if we use those. And that's why I picked the 5-year average, because that model seemed to come the closest. I look at the first 5 years, the second 5 years, and the total 10 years.
Okay.
Overall, the 5-year average came the closest.
Okay. So if, again, I know this has been posted on the district's website, correct, Mr. Thompson?
It is. It's on the front page of the website under current news.
Right. So I'm just calling this one because I think this is a very important one for those that are viewing this. Anyone else, and board members, if we look at this, we're hovering just under that 800 population for K through 8. Now, again, doesn't take into account pre-K, so that's a whole different topic. But in the next, let's call it 5 years, is when we start to increase to that like 850 number. So over the next 4 or 5 years, is we go up that 50, and then the following 5 years, we go up another 50 plus. So just thinking about that with the central school, the renovation project, that's kind of the time frame we're looking at when we're kind of busting at the seams.
Yes, but let me caution you that the further you get out in any of these projections, the percentages change.
Yeah, and that's why I was calling out the first 5 years. Is
Yeah.
because typically 3 to 5 years, pretty accurate, right?
And we also, be happy to have you, we can look at it, a number of districts have us look at it every 3 years.
Okay.
And don't do the whole thing, but just do the projections.
Okay.
See where you are.
And Chairman Smith, you're referencing page 22, correct?
I'm just gonna say figure 16 because my page is
Okay.
page 23.
Oh, okay.
The chart itself.
Oh,
I'm not good with numbers. I'm good with charts.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's page 23. Yeah.
All right. Just last question, just out of curiosity. Knowing that school districts need to provide services for those children pre-K that are in need of special education, et cetera, why don't you bring those into this? At least applying at least a historical flat line or something.
Well, we could certainly just list the numbers, but you could do that too. But we don't try to do any forecasting because we find we haven't found any algorithm that gives us a reliable projection. And it's only because you control that to some degree. You can limit the number of kids in your preschools. When you run out of room, do you still make more room for them? I don't know. I don't know what your policy is.
Yep.
In many districts, they say, we'll take 30.
Yep.
And you're done. So if we know you're going to take 30, what's the point in doing a projection? It'll be 30.
Yep.
But it's the projections are the ones that you are bound to take, regardless of how many show up at your front door. That's what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
Aside from the fact the state doesn't have really reliable data for that right now either.
Because even though, to your point, even if we had a capacity of 30, if all 30 were because of special, education, then those are the 30. So that's why I was just curious if you would ever do like some sort of like, on average, you all have 15 students that are special education. So even though you're correct, put 15 there across the board.
Mm-hmm.
That way it shows more of an accurate number that would be at that central school or at this middle school. But understood.
Well, you're right, but your analysis is correct in the sense that what we're seeing across the board is that more students, a greater percentage of students need a greater percentage of special accommodations than they did. That clearly is growing in all quarters.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. I rest my case. No. Thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that I would just note as far as the demographics are concerned is we really try to focus on what the state approves and what the state includes in their minimum standards for school approval. And currently preschool is not included in that. So it is a district choice to hold preschool or not. I would like to just note that there are several bills that are in the state legislature that are coming up this year that could possibly make preschool universal. That is the next trend. New Hampshire is only one of 6 states in the country that do not have universal pre-K. So if it's not coming to our state this next year, you can bet that it will be within the next few years as we do see more and more younger folks moving into this part of the state and really are requiring those kinds of services for their children. So I want to just briefly walk you through the descriptions of the schools so that we can spend the majority of our time dealing with the alternatives that we came up with. I do want to note that both the middle school and the central school are incredibly well maintained. Keith and Jerry have done hundreds of school visits when they worked at the department. I've certainly been in my share of schools over the years, and I can tell you that your schools are very well maintained. Your facilities director does an outstanding job. For the central schools specifically, there are some strengths that the central school has, and I think that its location in the center of the community is certainly one that is a strong strength for the facility. And your playgrounds, the fields, the equipment, they're all really well maintained and relatively accessible. As we know, there are significant limitations in the building. And when we went through the building, we met with each one of the principals. We talked about the instructional programs, what kind of programs they were offering. And when we go through the buildings, we look and see how do those spaces meet the instructional programs that are currently being offered. Not what is being projected to be offered perhaps in the future, but what the building is being utilized for right now. And throughout our tour of the central school, up and down and over and everywhere, and the rock room, which I think is just an amazing thing. I have never seen that anywhere in any of the schools I've ever been in. I think they should all have one, but I don't. But this is unique. But the spaces are incredibly small. There's very limited storage area in the central school, and there are really an insufficient number of classrooms for the instructional programming that you are currently offering. And I will say that you do offer preschool, and the minimum standard for a preschool room is 1,800 square feet. You folks aren't anywhere near that. Kindergarten is 1,200 square feet. Those are the recommendations. And so those are areas of concern, that those particular early childhood grades are severely undersized compared to what even New Hampshire calls their minimum standards. The Library Media Center, I think at one time it was a great space, but it has been cut in order to meet instructional needs within the building. And there are certainly limited parking at Central School, as well as the use of portables for office space and for additional storage. I think those are limitations of that building. And the site location actually severely limits the ability for any kind of expansion. You're pretty hemmed in site-wise there. So those were some of the limitations that we saw in the central school. And then we looked at the capacity of the building itself as far as students and the functional capacity. And when we talk about functional capacity, we talk about taking the number of students that you have and the number of dedicated classrooms you have. And you have fewer dedicated classrooms now than you did when the previous study was done, because as the instructional needs have changed, especially to accommodate students with special needs, more and more classroom spaces have been taken in order to meet those needs. So you're really pushing the envelope of what the building can do for the number of students. So if we look on page 30, the functional capacity, using your Hsd School District class sizes, the guidelines that are in your policy, we show functional capacity of 470 students. That puts you pretty much at capacity now. If you were to look at the state of New Hampshire class size guidelines on page 31, that shows a different story. That's, that functional capacity would indicate that you would have room for 549 students. But if you think about the class sizes themselves, the rooms are not all uniformly 900 square feet, which is the minimum standard. So think about 24, 25 students in those classrooms. And you can see where they're really, the functional capacity would be quite limited. So we did, in addition to looking at the functional capacity, we did an inventory of the current spaces so that you would have an idea. Jeff, your facilities manager, walked around with me several different times. We went through rooms, we measured them, and reviewed their historical use as well as their current use. Again, I would just say that you have a significant lack of storage in the Hsd Central School, which I think impacts the instructional programming just as much as the classroom sizes themselves. Moving on to the middle school, obviously the middle school is newer, it's designed differently. The facility strengths are a little bit more robust in that the classrooms are generally good sized. There have been a lot of recent upgrades to your technological infrastructure, your internal communication and security. And security reminds me of going back to the Hsd Central School. That is a significant issue, the front entrance to the school. When we went in, Jerry and I went in the first day, we're downstairs, and if we got into the elevator, we could have gone anywhere. And there was no direct sight line to the office, so they let us in, and then somebody had to come down and meet us to let us in and bring us up. From a security standpoint, that's a significant risk. And regardless, I think, of whatever you folks end up doing, I think that is an area that has to be addressed. But in looking at it, there's no easy fix in order to really provide that direct access for the office staff to see who's coming in and interact with them before they can gain access to the building. And you know, 20 years ago, that was not much of a concern, but it certainly is now. Back to the middle school. I think the major limitations that we saw was really around the lack of instructional space for chorus. That really jumped out at us as being a need. And your recess space and where the kids can gather outside is really limited because of the way the deliveries are brought in. So the kids could actually be in the driveway when trucks are coming in. So that is a limitation, I think, of the facility. But those were about the only two that we saw. This is a great facility. Looking at the functional capacity again, looking at Hsd School District sizes, the functional capacity is 466. So that looks as though you would have significant capacity within the building, but that's a little deceiving because of the nature of middle school and how instruction is offered. The building is being utilized really to its full extent now. And if you look at the New Hampshire class sizes, obviously, again, that gives you a bigger number, but again, it's misleading because having taught middle school, having 25 eighth graders in a room with me that would have been too many. So, possible, but not what we like to see. Again, we did the current program spaces for you for the Hsd Middle School. And then we looked at some of the future facility needs that you may want to consider as you're looking at the facilities themselves. Again, going back to the student enrollments, it looks as though there is going to be a projected increase, especially beginning in the elementary grades, and those will follow all the way up through. So the building that is currently maxed for capacity is the one that's going to be seeing the influx of students over the next 3 to 5 years. So we put in some considerations for you to think about as you are looking at your facilities. I think that one of the things that I know I struggled with as a superintendent sometimes was trying to get my community to get past their museum of school that they hold in their heads, that this is what the school looked like when I was there, and this is what the school, it was good for me. You know, I did okay there. It should be okay for everyone else. The problem with that is that the scope of education and what we provide for services is significantly different than when I went to school, and even when you folks went through school. So as we work our way through that museum of school, we need to make sure that we are looking at future programming, future needs, and what students may need going forward in the future. And one of the things that is being really emphasized is competency-based learning, project-based learning, all of those hands-on experiences. And that requires a different instructional space than a traditional classroom where everyone sits in rows and we memorize the periodic table, which I had to do. So looking overall at your facility, there are significant strengths but significant capacity issues that you have, and there are significant, I think, program crowding issues where you are providing programming, but in limited spaces to allow for a lot of flexibility. So on page 41, you can see within the Hsd School District, we feel that there are clear needs for remodeled educational spaces and a realignment of other spaces in relation to what we noted all the way through our report. So if you look on page 42, this is the summary of the functional educational capacity for the district. You'll see that in relation to 22 enrollment, there is a functional capacity of 98 students right now, of a positive 98 students. But if you look at Hampstead Central School, there's only 15 students. So realistically, you could put 15 more students in that building. But the reality is you're already at the functional capacity of that building before any projected enrollment increases over the next few years. Hampstead Middle School is looking good right now, but when you think 5 years out, as these populations move their way up through, that building is then going to become at its capacity within that time frame. So just looking at your class size guidelines, we show an overall potential of enrollment of 898 students based on the projections, and that's a functional capacity of 127 students. That's 10 years from now, if nothing changes. So again, you're going to see a larger population increase than 127 students based on our projections. So based on all of the information that we went through, based on the demographic projections and based on the facilities themselves, we then took a look at what are the alternatives, what are the possibilities for the buildings. And Jerry can tell you that he and I spent a lot of time going back and forth about what might be possible, what could function here, and how could you, we're both pretty conservative when it comes to fiscal issues. So we were really trying to think about how can you folks deal with your increased projections within the facilities that you currently have in order to not have an expense. And the answer that we came up with was there isn't one. The reality is we came up with two alternatives. One alternative was that that there should be an addition to the central school, remove the portable classrooms, and build an addition onto Hsd Central School to house all the early learning and classroom instructional needs for an increasingly diverse student population. That was our alternative 2. Alternative 3 was to build an addition onto the Hsd Middle School. And the reason that we thought that perhaps moving grade 4 up to the middle school, this site lends itself easier to renovation. But this is also a newer building. And then our first alternative is always just keep doing what you're doing and hope for the best. That is an alternative. We don't recommend it, but we want to make sure that you folks know that we did consider that as well. Jerry and I spent a lot of time looking at, would it be possible to move grade 4 now and put it into the middle school, alleviate the immediate need at the central school, and make this a 4 to 8 middle school and make that a pre-K to 3 building. And based on the enrollment projections, that alternative really didn't make any sense, because what we would be doing is we'd be putting a Band-Aid on the central school's functional capacity in order to make room for them and put everything up at the middle school. But we also know that as numbers increase, the central school is once again going to be at capacity within 5 years, even by moving the 4th grade out. And now the middle school would be over capacity within 5 years if you moved 4th grade up here. So we did not include that alternative in our report because we don't recommend it. It's not in our opinion, it's not a viable option for the long term. So we had those 3 alternatives that we provided to you. And the reality is, these are alternatives. These are options. We're not here to tell you that this is what you have to do. We're not here to tell you that this is what you need to do. It's really the community's decision as to how they move forward. I know I served on a school board for a long time, and the last thing I wanted was some consultant in a suit to come in and tell me how I needed to run my district and how things needed to be done. So we really do provide you options for your consideration. And the alternative 2 focuses on the central school and really removing the portable classrooms, building an addition of 4 to 6 classrooms, altering parts of the current building, especially the security issue in the front entrance, and improving and increasing the library media space. Those are significant issues. And I think that if you're going to provide preschool, you really should try to meet the minimum guidelines that are put forward by the Department of Health and Human Services. It's not even the Department of Education, it's DHHS. So those there are significant advantages to doing that. It certainly provides the needed instructional spaces for your population now, as well as into the future. The disadvantages of that alternative are that renovation and construction on an occupied building will require possibly the use of additional portables or other educational spaces as things are being constructed. We all know that given the economic climate of the state, that asking for money is always problematic at any time. So we know that that is a disadvantage of any building project, is dealing with the economic reality. Alternative 3 focuses on putting an addition onto this building that would house the 4th grade, and then really renovating. You're still going to have to renovate the central school in order to meet the security needs, as well as the space concerns for preschool and kindergarten. So there are advantages to possibly putting addition onto this building, but the disadvantages are quite significant as well. So those are the alternatives that we came up with. And as I said at the beginning, we purposely did not look at previous studies or what you folks were doing prior to us coming in, because we wanted to make sure that we were looking at the building and looking at the needs through our own set of eyes. And the reality is that we've come down in the same place that other folks have come in the past, and essentially where you folks are now as well, looking at an addition. So just some closing comments. You know, we really, again, want to thank all of the staff and the administration for their help and support. You know, this study is just one part of a more comprehensive look, and I hope that it's been useful for you in looking at alternatives and providing the demographic information and the functional capacity information that you'll need in order to move forward. And with that, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions before I lose my voice completely.
Board members?
I have a few.
Okay.
So as technology moves forward, right, usually in most businesses, technology allows you for greater efficiency. Do you see that something that would be happening in education, but versus what you had said before, where it seems like traditional education uses less room, whereas more dynamic education going forward would use more room?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and you know, probably 4 years ago, my answer would have been different. But after COVID, I think that technology has a role, but I'm not sure that it's going to have as great a role moving forward as we thought pre-COVID. I think the need for human interaction, the need for students to be social and to learn in a social environment, I think that evidence is pretty strong from the data that we've received post-COVID from a number of studies that there was a significant learning regression for some students. And I think that while technology has always been a great tool, I'm not sure it's going to replace what happens in the classroom. And like I said, 4 years ago, pre-COVID, my answer would have been very different, because I'm a geek and I love technology. And I thought for sure that technology would be the answer to the COVID situation. And it was a Band-Aid, but it really wasn't the answer.
Just to jump on that a little bit, question about technology, because I was going to bring that up to your point number 2, be technology smart. Are you seeing schools outfitting or changing classrooms to adapt to, technology labs, or how are they bringing those into their current footprint?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the school system. I think it depends on the resources that are available to the schools. I think you have some schools where the technology is incredibly robust, and you're talking one-to-one devices and enhanced connectivity.
Yep.
And they're also bringing in new versions of smart boards and all of those pieces. I think that schools need to be designed with a flexibility to accommodate changes in infrastructure, especially when it comes to technology.
Sorry, I know you have other questions. I just want to, because you're on the technology piece. Are you seeing that more in middle schools, high schools, a mix of both, even down in central, elementary schools? Where do you see that being most influenced?
I really see it more influenced at the elementary school.
Okay.
There is much more adaptive technology that's being brought into elementary schools now that help not only students with adaptive needs, but help all students learn better. And there has to be a way of accommodating and providing those opportunities. So I actually see more at the elementary school than I do at the middle and high school.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ebner?
Are there districts that run into space issues that have students stay home and work online? And would that be possible at the elementary school level?
Anything's possible.
Okay. But would it be good practice, would you think, at the elementary school level?
As an elementary principal, I would have to say no.
Okay. When you did your modeling, did you model for vouchers at all? Or given the possibility of an increase in the voucher system in New Hampshire, do you think that would have a significant impact on the numbers that would affect overall class size?
No, I don't believe so, because what we're seeing is almost 70% of the students who are currently using vouchers in New Hampshire were never in the public schools to begin with.
Okay.
They were either homeschool students or private school students who took advantage of the vouchers when they became available.
And a lot of the time, I don't know if this is true, but a lot of the time, do people go vouchers, or people go to other schools after elementary school versus before elementary school? I feel like a lot of charter schools.
I think the data is, I don't think there's enough data yet to really be able to answer that question with any kind of authority.
Okay. And then if you can talk about the impact of having additional students in elementary schools. So for example, if we stay at our current numbers and we go from 800 to 900, we'd go probably to around 23 students per classroom. If we have 4 additional classrooms, we're looking at 19 students per classroom. Is there a dramatic difference in test scores? Is there a dramatic difference in the ability to deliver education with that difference in numbers?
Well, I think there's been a number of studies about the effect of class size on student achievement. And I think certainly at the elementary level, the smaller the class size, the more individualized instruction you're able to give, especially in those early years when you're trying to teach reading, all of the social skills that are required that used to be taught at home and are not necessarily being taught at home. And students are coming to school with those social skill deficits. There needs to be some way of dealing with that. So I think the short answer is 23, 25 elementary school students, today's elementary school students versus 20 years ago elementary school students, are very, very different.
Okay. And then the last question I had is, are there middle schools that have a 4 through 8? Or what is your experience on that? Would that be overly complicated? I feel like there's a ginormous difference between a 4th grader and 8th grader. And would that make deliberative instruction a lot harder if we had to move the fourth grade up here?
I think that there is a grade span there, but there are very successful pre-K to 8 buildings around the state where 8th graders are in school with preschoolers and kindergartners. And yes, there's a significant gap there, but I also think that it provides opportunities. That's how I look at those things. But 4th grade instruction versus 8th grade instruction is incredibly different, and the needs would be incredibly different. Whether or not you would want 4th graders to be switching classes, or whether you would still want them to be in self-contained classrooms, that makes a difference in how you develop your spaces and utilize them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well,
My only question, surprisingly only one question here, but if I heard you right, you didn't see our plans or hear our plans of what we're thinking about for the addition before writing this?
no,
Have you seen it since?
yes,
Thoughts on it?
I think it makes sense.
Anything you'd change? Anything you would recommend if we were to go back to the drawing board or think about 5 years out, 10 years out?
No, I don't think so. I think that what we had kind of envisioned for an addition falls in line with what you've prepared for your voters.
Okay, thank you.
It was interesting actually to kind of see that after the fact.
That's why I was wondering, because it's like I read through your recommendations and it's like, yep, nailed it. That's exactly what we're looking
And we
at.
did, and truly, we did not look at it
Okay.
because I did not want to know, because I didn't want anyone to say that we were coming in to just rubber stamp what you folks were doing.
I appreciate that. Anything else? All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for this. This is very informative.
Great, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
very much.
Yes, exactly. No, thanks, Jerry. All right. So next we're going to move on to the HCS edition. I know we're going to have something here presented. So as usual, I'll start kicking this off, but I'll turn this over to Mr. Thompson. So board members, what you'll be seeing tonight is a little bit of a revision since we last met. About a month ago, a month and a half ago, we got the drawings that showed what the front would look like and everything. Through discussions with board members, through discussions with the construction committee, there were some changes that were requested. About 2 weeks ago, we requested those, even into last week, I think, to the construction team, from the PMO to the architects and to BPS, who's doing the work. And so what you'll see in a moment is a change to the front and side of the library. We did this for a few reasons. One was we really thought that it didn't fit with this community, with what the Central School is, what the community is about. We also saw that it was an opportunity to reduce cost. So what you'll see here on this drawing, if you remember, up here on the left, the library had a huge, layer of windows, and there was another set of windows over here to the right. So what we requested was make the bottom and the top look symmetrical. So that's why you see now we replaced, there was a blue canopy type of over the windows. And again, there was a full facade of windows there, and we took those out. And definitely appreciative of PMO architects and BPS to turn around that change, not only in the renderings here, the drawings, but also in giving us reduced pricing or a difference of pricing. So that's the only thing I was going to call out before we go into more, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, and I think, while we have the graphic up and the presentation up, we'll just, run through, what our priorities are with this new project. And I know the board and the public have heard these several times. Again, first we would just encourage folks to go to the Hsd School District website. The Central School renovation page has lots of information that you can really dive deeply, and you get to see the renderings, you get to see the elevations, the floor plans as well. We also have listed on there our informational sessions that we have, so you can come in person or on Zoom. The next one that we have is this Thursday at 8 a.m. at the Central School. We'd love to see folks show up for that. So again, we've really listened to the community over the last year and focused on what are the essentials. What do we absolutely need to do? So we separated needs and wants, and we have categorized those into 3 areas: safety, special education, and student learning. So again, the first image you see would be the new main office. And on the second floor is the library space. And then the second image below, you see the addition of the 4 classrooms that come off of the newly renovated 60s wing. So again, when we talk about safety and security, and it was said here tonight by the consultants, you know, the current main office configuration is not safe. And the proposed renovation that we have would create an entirely new main office area. And the great thing about this is there are several barriers, what we call controlled access, to be able to access the school building. You can come and you can visit the school. If you have something to drop off to your child, you don't need to access the main area of the building. You just need to drop something off to the main office. So all of that business that needs to be conducted in a school's main office will protect, it will keep our children safe. It will allow for separation. You know, we will have state-of-the-art security technology included in the development of this plan to ensure that we are limiting access. Second of all, we look at special education space. As it was said earlier, the size of the spaces in our special education department are not adequate to educate our children. And so the new plan, which would relocate the main office, provides an opportunity to turn that main office into new student service space. What does this do? I believe it enhances our current programming. It allows for children to receive their services in small groups and individualized without having, you know, 3 or 4 service providers in a single classroom, which is how we currently operate. And it also provides the opportunity for us to develop future programming. Again, the goal is, if you live here in Hampstead, every child that lives in Hampstead, to the greatest extent possible, they should be educated here in Hampstead. And you know, with this renovation project, we have the ability to create new programming that allows for us to keep children in district that might otherwise, through lack of programming, have to go to another school in a different community. In some cases, have to ride a school bus up to an hour to go to a different school. That doesn't happen overnight. There really are 3 components. You need to have space, you need to develop programming, and then you need to hire personnel. Well, the way for us to get started with that is we need the space first. We can develop the program, we can hire the personnel. We need the space. And then lastly, we've talked about student learning. You heard tonight, we have increased enrollment over the next 5 years, over the projected next 10 years. We want to expand our kindergarten programming. We need more space to do that. So this proposal has the renovation would include 4 additional classroom spaces. It also includes a library media center of 2,100 square feet that would go above the library. This will allow for the technology that we talked about tonight. This will allow for collaboration space. You know, this really is a state-of-the-art 21st century learning space, really that our children deserve. You know, I was in the library today, right as the librarian was preparing for a class to come down, you know, for a library lesson. To see them have to move the bookshelves and items out of the way to accommodate a very small area for children to actually receive literacy and library instruction, it just it's disheartening to see the space that they currently work with. And they work well with it, but it's just not adequate. And so again, those three priorities, and we can't wait on these. We're talking about safety, we're talking about special education, we're talking about student learning. This plan, this proposal really is about the essentials, the needs that we have today for our schools, and this project helps to satisfy our current needs. And I'll turn it back to Mr. Smith.
I think it's all been said, so it's not more for me. I think board members, any questions about what you've seen, about the changes? All right. I know we're going to talk about it here when we get into the bond article discussion, so maybe we just start moving right into that, but we'll talk about the pricing first. So with all that said, we've been doing a lot of work with with PMO, the architects, and with BPS, who would be the ones running the construction. So board members, what you've got in your packets is a breakdown. There's a front and back page to this. The front page has just the summary of the estimated value, which is $8.19 million for this project. Hard cost of $6.99 million. Soft cost, which include fees, geotech, surveys. There is no furniture, there is no technology, as you can see, they're not included, NIC, and other miscellaneous fees of $775,000. We do have a contingency of $425,000, which is about 5% of the project. So that being said, the total again is $8.19 million for this project. Other information that's here, but on the back you will see the breakdown that we've received from the PMO of how that breaks down for that overall number for this project. Again, right down to site allowances, concrete, masonry, metals, etc., which we've begun the review. There'll be, of course, as we refine this more, there'll be other areas we'll look at if this is voted and approved about how to reduce. So this again is what they've provided as a max contract. It's for a fixed price. This is there. Will not go above this price. As we saw in the 60s wing, they did underrun that by 8%. So we've got history with the team that they have underrun in the past. Not saying they'll underrun by 8%, but we know that they're good about managing their budgets and communicating pretty well on where they are as they go through the projects. I don't know if there's any questions about this number here, but that's the overall project cost without talking about capital reserve, without talking about interest rates. So, questions on this? All right. So I think at this point we should go into the bond article discussion. We have the not to exceed price of $8.19 million. But I'd like at this point to turn it over to Mr. Dowd unless there's any questions about this number in the breakdown from PMO.
Any questions on the breakdown? No?
All right, so let me introduce what we've asked Mr. Dowd to do, and then Mr. Dowd will turn it over to you. So as everybody would imagine, Jeff has the numbers. That was the $8.19 million. We had asked Mr. Dowd to look at a 5, 10, and 15-year bond proposal. But in that also, we've asked Mr. Dowd to look at if we utilized our capital reserve to pay down some of the overall cost, what would that look like? The three numbers that we had given Mr. Dowd were if we pulled $400,000 out of capital reserve, $500,000 out of capital reserve, and then $600,000 out of capital reserve. I think before asking Mr. Dowd for some interest rates, I think we as a board should talk about where do we stand with capital reserve, because I think that'll give us a better way to talk to, have Mr. Dowd present to the numbers what that would look like for us in a bond. So I'm open to board members. I know in the past we talked about how much we would draw from capital reserve, but opinions, suggestions.
Just an opinion. We've got about 700,000 in there now. We've talked to Jeff Mackey, our facilities director, multiple times. We've looked at different projects that might be coming up, and keeping a nest egg in case there was some sort of an emergency or some sort of a need. And it seems like any of the potential projects all hover around that $150,000 to $200,000 range. So for me, keeping about 200,000 in capital reserve would make the most sense. Just in case something happened, just in case we needed something in an emergency. So for me, it makes sense to utilize about 500,000 of the capital reserve to put towards this.
I would agree with that. I have the same feeling on that.
My mind was at the 600,000, leave 100,000 in, but I mean, I think that it would be wise, to your point, most projects are at least 100,000. If we have to take out another oil tank, it's at least 100,000, if not up to almost 200,000. And we know we have 2 overall, paving, roofs, that kind of stuff. So, and I think Mr. Mackey would appreciate us having a little fund right there, just in case those rainy days. So I'd be good with that too. So I think that's unanimous. So I think, Mr. Dowd, if you can help us out, and I know you've got a bunch of numbers pre-canned for us, but if we were to look at the 8.19 total project, take away the 500,000, brings us to roughly 7.69
7.69, yeah.
69 million. Can you help us out with where we would be with a 5, 10, and 15-year bond?
Sure. So interest rates are going to be the same regardless of whether it's the 8.190 million or the 7.69 million, 4.75% for 5 years.
I'm sorry?
4.75%
Okay.
for 5 years, 5% for 10, and 5.25% for 15.
Okay.
Now, these are their estimates. They are conservative, so hopefully bond sale would yield a lower interest rate, better effective rate. But these are the budget rates that we have to work with. So we have obviously a gamut of options in terms of whether to look at the 5-year or 10 or the 15. So I'm not sure if there's a particular criteria, if it's going to be estimated tax rate impact, or how do you want to handle that?
I'd ask, so Mr. Giard was at a construction committee meeting this afternoon with Mr. Thompson, and I know others were there. Unfortunately, I apologize, I wasn't able to be there. I was stuck in the blessed Boston traffic. But if Mr. Giard could give an update where the committee members were suggesting and to inform the board.
Yeah, the committee members really hovered around the 10-year or the 15-year options. And a lot of the discussion had to do with the fact that, and we heard it tonight during the first presentation, our buildings are well maintained. We have a great facilities team that does a great job maintaining things. So the impact of this project could, in essence, be spread out over multiple years or longer term, because we do a great job of taking care of our facilities. And then we also heard in that presentation, and it's kind of funny, the presentation tonight and our discussion mirrored one another in a lot of different ways. But another thing that we had discussed was, this is going to be something that once we complete it, we're not going to need any more major construction projects in the foreseeable future. This is going to satisfy the majority, if not all, of the needs that we have. So we're not going to really need to worry about, paying this off quickly, saving up more money, adding more money to capital reserve. We're going to be able to do this, and we're going to be able to maintain the building the best way we can, and it's going to last for a long time. So the recommendation was really between the 10-year and the 15-year, keeping in mind what we've heard from the community over the past couple years and trying to be fiscally responsible. The difference between 10 years and 15 years was about $1 million in interest. But the difference as far as the impact to our taxpayers was about $20 a month less. So it almost made more sense to us. And the recommendation that we had agreed upon was to move forward with the 10-year financing, the 10-year bond versus the 15. And just for everybody's reference, for a $400,000 home, the tax burden monthly was about $6 less a month if we went 15 years out. We'd be saving a little bit more money, but we'd have a bigger impact monthly. And looking at our fixed income families and our fixed income homes and taxpayers, it seems like we're doing the responsible thing here, trying to meet in the middle and going forward with that 10-year program.
So basically, for a $400,000 house, if we're spending $6 a month, we're going to save $1 million in interest.
Other way around.
If you're
For a $400,000 home,
Yeah.
if we pushed it out for another 5 years, if
Yeah.
we went from the 10-year to the 15, we'd be saving $6, but we'd be spending
Yeah.
an extra $1 million. Yes.
Yeah. So if we spend $6 more, yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
the-
If we spend $6 more a month, we're going to save $1 million.
Correct.
Yeah. That seems like a good deal to me.
All right.
so I guess board members, are we good with focusing on the 10-year for right now? Unless there's any. All right. So Mr. Dowd, hopefully this helps with some math then. If we're looking at that 8.19 million minus 500,000 that we would take out of capital reserve brings us 7.69 million on a 10-year bond that is 5%. What are we looking at if we were to say first year payment, or actually total payment, and then what's that first year versus second year payment?
So total aggregate payment is 9,804,000 or 805, 9,805,000 in aggregate.
Okay.
First year payment is $192,250.
Okay. And then the second year?
1,134,275.
So 1.03 million.
1.13.
1.13 million. Okay.
And we go from that year, I won't go all the way through, but from that year we go down in the second full year to 1,095,000, down to the final year of 788,000.
Okay.
Sort of escalates, de-escalates all the way down.
Okay. So just to recap to make sure I've got it right, but also just to repeat. So total aggregate of the project would be 9.805 million with interest.
Mm-hmm.
First year payment would be 192,000. Second year payment would be 1.13 million, and then it would, as they slowly decline until the final year of 785,000.
788 that last year.
Sorry?
788 in that last year.
788,000.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Board members, questions on that? Thoughts?
What was the cost in the fire department edition?
The cost, what, 1.75?
1.75.
Went, but it ended up costing 1.5?
No, 1.75 is the total cost, and I believe the tax impact would be 1.5.
Right, okay.
And they did that over 1 year? So basically, this would be annually less of an impact than what the fire station edition would be?
About 30% less at between 1.5 to 1.
Okay.
Rounding numbers.
Yeah.
Any questions on it? Yeah, I don't want to lead the witnesses on anything.
No,
So
I don't have any questions on that. I think it makes sense to put in the 500,000, offset that cost as much as we can
Yep.
for a 10-year.
What's the per year if we do 5? Roughly, you don't have to have.
Talking, obviously the first year stays the same, 192.
Yeah.
And then it ranges from year 1 at 1.868
Okay.
million to 1.571 in year 5.
So yeah, more than the fire station.
yeah, almost double. I mean, not necessarily double than what we're saying for 10-year payments,
Yeah.
but
No,
far as a
the
yearly.
10-year makes more sense to me.
okay.
And Jay, you had said the monthly tax burden on a 5-year was significantly higher than 10.
Yeah, again, based off of a $400,000 home, it went from $30 a month up to $50 a month. So it was a major difference there compared to what we saw from the 10 to the 15.
Yeah. I don't think it's doable over a 5-year. I think we do have to go 10 years.
Okay. And then, I think you just said it, but I just want to confirm what you said, but also ask Mr. Dowd, that for a $400,000 home, it was $30 a month?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. You agree with that, Mr. Dowd? I don't know if you got that handy or not, but
Yeah,
I know it's going to be something we're going to want to be able to communicate.
I think that's about right.
Okay.
And that wasn't, when I did came up with the $30 a month, that was before agreeing to the $500,000 out of capital reserve. So it should come in slightly less than that.
28.
There you go.
All right.
Now, as far as interest rates go, long term, I don't know if Jeff or. So basically, our interest rates have tripled over the last year. And I'm guessing there's very little chance that next year they're going to go down by a third, or like there's.
You know, I doubt it, and really it depends on how this would hit the market and what the market would be willing to pay for it. Really. And that, although interest rates generally have gone up, bond pricing is a little bit different than just, Fed-based interest rate. It plays into it, but it really depends on how attractive this type of an option is at the time we go to market.
Now, do we have the ability to refinance the bond?
I think it'd be possible. I think we probably need a few authorization from the voters to be able to engage in another debt, another bond offering. But if we were to do that, I would imagine that the numbers would be compelling. So if we got into this, the interest rate of 5 and it dropped to 2, at some point in that lifespan of the bond, it's going to be attractive to refinance if that's the case.
Yeah, that's what I've been curious about is, let's say in 3 years, interest rate comes down. That's one of the attractive parts about making this a 10-year, is that you have that opportunity over the life to reduce it if possible. So I think that's
the idea that, a year ago, we would have been talking about refinancing because the rates were so low.
Right.
And really throughout the life cycle of this or similar projects over the past number of years, we haven't really had that question come up. Right. So I will verify with the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank on the viability of it, how often they've seen it in this type of market, and then what the process would be, so that we're all informed as a board and community.
Historically, what's usually the bond rate for municipal bonds?
Oh, last year we were at like 1.5.
Well, I meant like over the last 10 or 20 years. Do you have
I don't have that off the top.
Okay. All right.
Come on, Jeff.
I know. A lot of trivia out there, but not that.
Yeah. I think one thing that's important, I was just looking at this 9.8 million total. I mean, this is about 4 million less than last year's, what we had brought with interest. So just for those that are, keeping tabs at home, I want to say, I'm giving rough numbers here. It was a $12.5 million project with about $1 million and some change interest that we're looking at. So that was going to be a $13.5 to $14 million project last year.
And that was last year.
Right.
Imagine if we priced it for this year, that project would be substantially more.
Correct. So just to, we prioritized, reduced the scope of the project, reduced the cost. So I think that, it makes sense with a 10-year, given opportunities in the future. Especially, other ways we're going to be looking at how do we reduce the cost, what other grants are out there, reapply, or we're still on the list for New Hampshire, to get the reimbursement for this year, even though we're 7th or 8th on the list, but it may improve next year. So who knows there, but I think we definitely have opportunities, but those are, smaller, but we'll keep on working to reduce this price. So, all right, so it sounds like we're on the same page right now as far as 10-year bond is what we'd be looking at, 500,000 out of capital reserve to reduce the price. Did I catch that? We good there?
Almost there.
Okay. No, just want to make sure if any questions, any other comments. Dowd?
Yeah, so right you were. So a year ago we were looking at 12,595,000 at 1.5%. Total payment, I think you're almost spot on, 13,854,000 in aggregate. So compare that to the 9,804,000.
All right. So I guess that's like a 35%, 30%, 35% reduced price and scope, so.
4 million.
Yep.
So even with a higher interest rate, this is still not a terrible way to finance and come out compared to where we were last. I really thought we'd get hit with the interest rate.
All right.
Yeah, so if you go back to 1984, the average is right around 3.25. So it's not horrible.
Yep. So I think at this point, I don't know if you've got draft language up for the warrant that we would want for this or not, but I know that we would want a motion to approve the option in advance to warrant.
So I would, I believe warrant is that next on your, it's H.
So we can wait till then and do it all together with all the other warrants.
I prefer that. We know where we're at, 10
Yep.
years.
Yep.
500 from capital reserve and
Okay.
address it in sequence.
All right. So we're past C, so we're past the bond article discussion. And like we said last meeting, this meeting would be a longer one. So we're going to keep moving here and move to the budget discussion. And, you know, I'd say thankfully, we've done a pretty good job of going through the budgets in the past. You know, we've been doing this since end of September. We had a bunch of meetings in October, continue to review, refine in November. So turn it over to Mr. Thompson to talk about the budget.
Sure. As Chairman Smith mentioned, you know, this has been a process that began even prior to September. Mr. Dowd and I began having conversations with the building administrators in July, actually. We start a new fiscal year and we begin to plan for the next one. And, you know, that process it includes our building administrators working with their team, their departments to build a budget. Again, that process, you know, we use a zero-based budgeting model, which is to essentially look at every single expenditure. We build the budget from zero, we build it from the ground up to make sure that we are capturing the needs that we anticipate for the district. And really there's 4 goals that go into the development of the budget. The first goal is to make sure that we are making improvements and enhancements with the strategic plan, which this budget does. We also want to make investments in our physical plan, our physical infrastructure, which we've heard a lot of compliments about this evening. We also want to make advancements in our information technology. And another piece that's really critical in this process is making sure that we are being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. So, you know, we just had a very robust conversation about the building project moving forward. We understand that tied to the success of that building project is the responsibility that we put into the development of the operating budget. They go hand in hand. When the taxpayer gets their property tax bill, this has an impact. So again, all of the information, there's a great deal of any presentation that's been done here, any budget detail, you're going to find on the Hsd School District webpage. If there's information, additional information that you'd like, a question that you have, you can always reach out to Mr. Dowd and myself. So tonight we're really presenting our proposed budget to the board for their consideration. And the 2023-2024 proposed budget is a total of $32,821,710. And as we've indicated in previous meetings, just wanted to highlight a couple of the priorities. So there's a priority for creating greater digital content for both our library media centers at the central school and at the middle school. We also want to put our furniture on a replacement cycle. A lot of the furniture in our buildings has reached its end of life, so we want to make sure that we are making that investment over time. We also have increased funding for field trips and off-site experiential learning opportunities for our students. We're also looking at improving technology in the language arts department at the middle school. And we're also looking to reinstate a curriculum cycle, and that would include an expenditure for a new language arts curriculum for next year. In addition, we've talked about facilities. There are a number of routine maintenance projects in the facilities budget, but that the budget also would include the replacement of an underground oil tank at the central school. That needs to come out, and it's an urgent priority for the school district. So in sum total, even with us being able to fund our priorities, we are looking at a budget of $32,821,710 compared to last year's operating budget that was voted and approved by the voters of $32,189,534. That is a change of $632,176, or approximately a 1.96% increase for next year. And I don't feel the need to go over this next slide with great detail. Certainly, Mr. Dowd and myself can answer any questions in terms of, these are some of the drivers. You'll notice under salaries, one thing that we should mention is that you will see a discussion later on about tentative agreements for the collective bargaining units for our HEA and HAS. So that's those increases are represented on a separate article. But then there are other drivers here as well. The other information for consideration, and we have a separate item on tonight's agenda to discuss the proposed budget versus the default budget, and the default budget calculation. But should the proposed budget fail, the default budget would be $32,775,756, and that default budget is $45,954 less than the proposed. So again, we've been through a tremendous amount of process here in terms of the detail in the budget. This really is the overview of what the proposal is. And I'll entertain any questions that folks may have about the administration's proposal.
No question. I just want to say I appreciate the process that we're utilizing last year and this year on, really digging in deep, zero-based start, and bringing out 1.9% with what we've seen as, increase in energy cost and other things. So, knowing those costs are up in the double digits and still being able to come in with a 1.96%, I think we've done a lot of trimming, which is good. So I appreciate the process, and there's some things I knew we wanted to do this year that we took out because it just didn't make sense for this year with how the economy is of sorts. So having that and balancing giving a good education, students increasing what we want to do with the different programs, I think it came in a really good area of the budget. Other members?
So I don't really have a question, but just a kind of a statement. So over the last 11 years, the average increase has been 2.6. So you guys basically are coming in 20% or more or less than the average increase over the last 11 years. So I think that's really good. So I appreciate it.
Agreed.
So you have the budget, we've talked about that. The default budget, you have a little bit more detail on that I handed out or for your packets. There's a summary sheet on top summarizing what has been either added or removed in the default budget and why. It's a little bit too rapid to fit up on the screen, but for the public, if you go to our homepage, this presentation, default budget, a more complete object report is out there. What you're looking at on the screen behind you is our proposed revenue budget as well, and you can see that overall, what I would project for revenue is really difficult to project this time of the year, but even going conservative on revenue with an unassigned fund balance of 800,000 or so, looking at around approximately the same tax impact, a slightly higher tax impact on the district assessment as proposed on the revenue side of the budget as well. So you typically approve an expense budget, but we do have a revenue budget piece of it as well that does get reviewed this time of the year, and it will be approved by the board in the same manner that the operating budget would be. However, I don't actually set revenue until around October of the succeeding year. So we know better what our grants are going to be. We have a much better idea what our unencumbered fund balance is going to be able to reduce the assessment to the town. So that's up there for your review. On the default budget, that's out there as well. And again, I've gone in and delineated with some detail, and that again is on the website, what we've added, where we've increased, where we've decreased, and why. Certainly, if you have any questions on the operating budget or on the default budget, I am more than happy to entertain them.
So on the default budget, the biggest increase is the 464,774 for Pinkerton,
Correct.
which is an 8.2% increase.
Mm-hmm.
Is that set, or could that change at all?
That could change, but I don't see it changing. I don't think we'll have.
Not significantly, probably.
Correct.
Okay. And we basically don't have a lot of control over what Pinkerton is charging us, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But if their expenses or their enrollment exceed what they're projecting, and we usually see a credit at the end of the year. I think this year we had a credit of 18,000 coming into this year.
Yeah, I may be stealing Mr. Thompson's update or thunder on this one, but we did talk about having Pinkerton representation here at one of our meetings coming up in January, I believe.
The 24th.
The 24th. So those are questions that we should probably ask about.
January or June?
January 24th.
January 24th. Okay.
Yep. So I think that's something that, some of these questions about tuition, about, I know, Megan, you've got a meeting coming up with the building committee up there. Some of the things that we can think about, those discussion points to have with Pinkerton representation.
If you all recall, in the default budget, I start with last year's voted budget, and certain things like previously voted collective bargaining agreements. We have HSPA in this default calculation quite a bit. Our maintenance and support staff union, obviously the Pinkerton increase. I also take out things such as one-time items like website development and a few miscellaneous things that we purchased. Capital reserve was voted, that was a one-year thing. The lot line adjustment was voted, that was a one-year thing. So that's how we come to that final default number. And if you have any questions on that calculation or some of the underlying data, or if you see something that you would think be a one-time item that I haven't included, let me know. But I scoured it, and not only I scoured, but Bob and I met and scoured it together. Actually, Bob scoured it and came up with a few more. So
I don't have any questions. I think we've reviewed the budget numbers quite a bit over the last 3 months.
you guys have been very involved in that, and I appreciate that.
All right. If everybody's okay for now, we're going to move on. We'll bring all the warrant discussion in a moment. But we're going to turn it over to Mr. Giard to speak to the two agreements that I'd say the four members here, besides myself, have been in negotiations over the last 2 to 3 months. And Mr. Giard to give an overview of what's in each one of those agreements.
Yeah, and I just want to echo your sentiment there and thank Megan, Aaron, and Carl, also Mr. Thompson and Mr. Dowd for attending a lot of meetings over the last couple months to make sure that we were able to come to these agreements, and also to thank the staff on both teams for their input, their efforts, their work, because they put a lot of work into this to make these happen. So I'll cover the tentative agreement for HAS first. We are tentatively agreeing on a 3-year contract. The cost of the contract would be $213,172 in the first year, which is 2023-2024. and then 185,420 in the next 2 years, so the 24-25 school year and the 25-26 school year. One of the goals that we had here was to try to become more competitive within the area, within the region, for hiring our support staff and getting more support staff members into our buildings to help take care of our students and to help with the learning. And I think with this wage increase, which is in essence is $1.55 an hour to start, I think we've been able to accomplish that. So for any employees who on the salary schedule, the current employees who are on the salary schedule will receive $1.55 an hour increase plus their yearly step increase. And then employees who are off step will receive a $2 an hour increase each year of the agreement. And again, this enables us to hire competitively as well as keep and retain the folks that we have in the district already. As far as stipends go, we have an intensive needs stipend where we are we're increasing it from 50 cents an hour to $1 an hour. This is for those paraeducators working with intense needs students as determined by the Director of Student Services. So again, that'll be a 50 cent per hour increase on their stipend. Stipend 16.2 for any paraeducator who is certified as a registered behavioral technician. They will see an increase from 25 cents an hour to $5 an hour. And again, this was designed to help the district incentivize staff to obtain an RBT certification and attract and retain employees in these difficult to fill positions. This enables Mr. Thompson and his team to do that. One of the other stipends, the other stipend that we have here is to allow greater flexibility and promote paraeducators to cover for classrooms when we have absences and teachers out. We are changing from $30 a day to $10 an hour. And again, this will give our administration an opportunity to staff classrooms where teachers are absent for any reason. We are also going to be initializing a mentoring program for our support staff team. This will again help us teach, coach, train our paraeducators into the district, further along their knowledge and what they're capable of doing and passing that down to our students. So we should see a benefit on the student side of this by offering a mentoring program. There will be a $500 stipend per mentee, and this will be paid, it'll be a $500 stipend to be paid for the year, $150 for a day of training. Mr. Dowd, if I remember correctly, that was for the entire year, the $500, correct? For the mentor, per mentee, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
For the mentor, I don't know if we specified per mentee. Do we?
Okay.
Yeah.
The next item on this one was for the crossing guards. They will receive $8.70 per hour stipend, which will increase by 60 cents for the 2024 through 2025 and the 2025 and 2026 years. Childbearing and child rearing leave. Employees will be able to use up to 8 weeks of their leave, and this will align with our HEA union. And then the last piece of this was the insurance buyout potential. Employees opting out of health insurance currently receive an insurance buyout of $750. If 10 or fewer members of this union opt out of this insurance, they're going to receive a $1,000 stipend. If 11 to 20 employees opt out, there'll be a $2,000 per employee stipend. And then if 21 or more opt out of this, there will be a $3,000 per employee stipend. And that is the HAS agreement. Anything to add to that, Mr. Thompson or Mr. Dowd?
Oh, well done.
Any questions?
And just to be clear, those stipends are per employees who opted out.
Correct.
By October 1st, I believe.
Yeah, October 1st.
All right, and moving on to our teachers union, our HEA agreement. This contract is going to be for a 2-year term. In the cost of this for 2023-2024 will be $346,151, and for the second year it will be for $324,348. The wage increase here, we kind of took a different approach to this, and we didn't do a blanket increase. We are increasing on-step employees in year 1 by 4% plus their step increase, and then in year 2 they'll receive a 3% step increase. And again, the focus on this was to help enable us to hire more teachers and bring more teachers in at that entry-level position and keep us competitive again within the area. And then for off-step employees, they will receive 3% on each year of the contract. So we're raising it by an extra percent for those entry level or those new teachers coming into the district trying to bring people on board. To help offset the cost of this and to help reduce some of the liability within the district, in year 1, we are going to go from a 90% to an 89% district contribution on the health insurance for the members of this union. And then in year 2, we will be reducing it by another 1%, going from 89% down to 88%. So by the end of the contract, we'll be basically gaining 2% back from the insurance that we pay for our teachers. We are going to, let's see, the next part here is the retiree medical supplement. This will no longer be offered for employees unless they are hired and working before June 30th of 2025. What this was, it was an effort of ours to reduce some of the liability on the long-term liability on the district. And by paying lifetime benefits to some of our staff, we are going to be retiring that for anyone hired after June 30th. Again, just like with the HAS, childbearing and child rearing leave, employees will be able to use up to 8 weeks of their leave. Current right now is 6 weeks, so they're gaining an extra 2 weeks there. Planning period coverage. Again, we've seen a lot of teachers who have had to call in sick for various reasons or are covering for others. Teachers using their planning period to cover other classrooms will receive $38 a class period, I believe, for that one. So again, they're helping us out. We're appreciative of what they're doing for us. So they'll receive an extra $38 in a stipend for covering a class during their planning period. And then the same insurance buyout option for teachers that we have for our paraeducators. Currently the buyout is $500. We're going to that same tiered program where if 10 or fewer employees opt out, each will receive $1,000. 11 to 20 employees opting out, each will receive $2,000, and 21 employees or more opting out will receive $3,000 in the stipend. And again, like Aaron asked in the first one, that is for the staff that decides to opt out. It's not for everybody.
And I do have one adjustment to this, and I feel as though Melissa may kill me, although I did give her a heads up on it. I ran a recalculation, and year 1 is $350,123, and year 2 is $324,467, a very slight difference in that second year.
Any questions for Mr. Giard? Any thoughts, discussions on that?
I think for me, the biggest thing is the bottom line increase is 3.05. It might be a little bit more now with the readjustment, but the average inflation over the last 40 years has been 3%. So, and it's expected to be around 3% over the next 2 years. So the teachers will be getting basically, they'll be neutral when it comes to inflation. But we've also, the lifetime insurance, there's only 3 districts in the entire state that had been getting that. We were one of them, and we're going to be discontinuing that. But on the flip side is we are more competitive with hiring initially, which I think was really helpful. And then they were willing to negotiate more cost sharing when it comes to health insurance. So the union did work with us greatly in order to make this contract happen, and I think it's the benefit of us and the community long term that they will be compensated and get security over the next 2 years, but they're giving up a percentage of their health insurance long term, which is our benefit.
I think the 2 points for me, besides what you've stated, are the insurance buyout. I mean, insurance cost us, as everybody knows, insurance costs are up there per employee, and offering employees a buyout that if they opt out and gain insurance off their spouse or another way, that we're compensating them there, and it's still a net profit for the district is good. I also think it's important that going forward we'll be, at least for the first few cycles, we'll be negotiating one contract and not both in the same year. So I think that's beneficial. I think we saw a lot of energy going into this, and we saw it last time also, but being able to go one with 2 years, one with 3 years, that's going to help us. So I'll just echo, I appreciate everybody's support and direction, leadership on this, including from our attorneys and also from the unions, the union reps. Definitely some good discussions throughout the way. I'm glad we got to this, to where we're at. So thank you for the summary, Ms. Giard, Dr. Hubman.
So the only comment I just want to make to anybody who's listening was it does sound from this that we're just giving, but this is also benefiting their staff, and it's benefiting the district as well financially. So both, all of them.
I just want to say, I don't see it as giving.
Well,
I see that there's some plus, some minus, right?
Yeah, well, some of it is just not spelled out the same way, the other parts, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was the HAS and HEA tentative agreements. Now we're going to move into the warrant articles. So this is where we're going to review the warrant articles, drafts, and so board members, you have this in your packets where we're going to want to have motions to approve and advance each warrant article. So this is kind of the meatier part, but I think some of this we've ironed out. So hopefully
Before you begin on the warrants, just to keep it clean, would it be helpful to ratify those two agreements? Or did you take a vote to do that?
we could ratify those right now. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. You want to kick that off, Mr. Giard? Since
I will make a motion to ratify. Should we do them individually? Okay. I'll make a motion to ratify the HAS tentative agreement as presented.
looking for a second?
I'll second that.
Second by. Any questions or comments? All right, all approved? All right.
I'll make a motion to ratify the HEA tentative agreement as proposed.
Second.
Megan? All right, discussions? All approved?
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Dowd. Yes, much cleaner. So now we'll move on to the warrant article discussions. All right. So just to remind everyone, the first session of the annual meeting, the deliberative, would be held here on Tuesday, the 7th of February, 2023 at 7 p.m. That session shall consist of the explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles 2 through most likely 8. The warrant articles can be amended by subject to the following limitations. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. B, warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for the final vote on the main motion as amended. And C, no warrant articles shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. An amendment that changes the dollar amount of an appropriation in a warrant article does not violate this provision. Then the second session of the annual meeting, which is the voting, that'll again be on warrant articles numbers 1 through most likely 8. And that's going to be conducted again here Tuesday the 14th, the second Tuesday in March 2023 from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So That's what's going to happen between the deliberative and the voting dates. So I'm going to start going through the articles, and we'll look at that and start to do a vote. Article 1 is the election of officers. As we've talked about last time, there are 2 school board members positions that are up. Both are for 3-year terms. Then we also have the school district moderator up for 3-year term, school district treasurer up for 3-year term, and the school district clerk up for a 3-year term. So hopefully we have committee members that want to step up and apply for these. Next, what we talked about just a little while ago, Article 2, the bond issue central school renovation project. Shall the voters of the Hsd School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of, I'm going to need some help on this one, Mr. Dow, because what we've talked about was we would list on this warrant article, we would raise and appropriate the sum of $8.19 million.
Perfect.
For the Hsd School renovation project. Now, where do we put in here that we are going to utilize?
Just keep going.
All right. And authorize the issuance of not more than
$7,690,000.
Oh, that's where it is. Okay, thank you. Not more than $7.69 million of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, to authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other terms thereof, to authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend any federal, state, or other aid that may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, and to authorize the school board to take any and all action necessary in connection therewith, or to pass any other vote relative thereto, and to further to raise and appropriate an additional sum of $192,000 for the first year's interest payment of the bond.
$192,250.
$192,250.
Yep.
Thank you very much. My only question on this, do we or should we state where that $500,000 is coming out of capital reserve in this?
I would be comfortable adding that after where it says bond. So right at the end, right before it says 3/5 ballot vote required.
Okay.
And we would put something to the effect that it would probably be in the form of a note that $500,000 will be utilized from capital reserve.
Okay.
In this warrant article.
Okay. So we'll put in there note : $500,000 to be utilized from existing funds of the capital reserve.
Capital reserve fund, yeah.
From capital reserve fund. Thank you.
And I'll ask that as you discuss this warrant article, it's a little different than the way we've handled this in the past, and that if you're okay to approve it in substance, I can verify and run it by council for form.
Right.
So it may change slightly legally, but if the substance is there, we're good.
Okay. So I am looking for a motion there to approve as stated.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right. Any discussion on that? Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Looking for all that approve. Raise your hand. Or do we have to get a roll call?
We don't need roll call for that.
Thank you. All right. All approve? All right. 5 out of 5. Nice. All right. Operating budget. So I want to get the numbers over here. Thank you, sir. All right. So Article 3, operating budget. Shall the voters of the Hsd School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts to set forth on the budget posted with the warrant for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $32,821,710. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be, there we go, default budget of $32,775,756 which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Hampstead School District by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant article 3 operating budget does not include appropriation proposed under other warrant articles. Majority vote required. Looking for a motion as stated.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second by Megan. Any discussions? All approved? All right. Moving on. Article 4, collective bargaining agreement. Was this the numbers here, Jeff, that you were saying is a little bit different?
Yep.
Okay. Can you give me those numbers again?
Yep. Year 1 will be 350,000, 123.
Yep.
Year 2 is 324,467.
All right. Thank you.
And that 350 will appear in two places, under year 1 and then right below that to appropriate the current year.
Yep. All right. So, Article 4, collective bargaining agreement, Hampstead Education Association, the HEA. Shall the Hampstead School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hampstead School Board and the Hampstead Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salary and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Cost distribution of year 1 total is $350,123. Cost distribution year 2 would be $324,467. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $350,123 for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, which sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and fringe benefits required by the new arrangement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote required. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
It's seconded by Mr. Giard. Any questions, discussions? All right, all approved? All right, we're on a roll, 5 out of 5. All right, Article 5, collective bargaining agreement, Hampstead Association of School Staff. Shall the Hampstead School vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hampstead School Board and Hampstead Association of School Staff, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Cost distribution of year 1 total is $213,172. Cost distribution of year 2 is a total of $185,420. And cost distribution of year 3 total is $185,420. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $213,172 for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and fringe benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote required. For a motion.
So moved.
Megan, seconded by Aaron. Any discussions? All approved? All right. All right. Article 6, authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the Hampstead School District, if Articles 4 or 5 is defeated, authorize the Hampstead School Board to call a special meeting at its option to address the Article 4 and or 5, Article 5 cost item only. Majority vote required. Just as a note, without this article, the district would have to petition the Superior Court for a special school district meeting. This saves the district the expense of attorney fees and court costs.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Discussions? All approved? All right. All right. This one is the next one. This one, I think we need to have some discussion around this one before we say what this is. We talked last time about the capital reserve. Over the last few years, we've increased it each year. Last year, we had requested to the voters $500,000 after the first $150,000, which is $150,000 is returned to the voters. We kept $500,000 put in the capital reserve, which we just voted to utilize in the addition proposal. And then anything above that $500,000 went back to the voters. So now here we are with this year. Where do we think we want to be as requesting to the voters? To allocate to our capital reserve.
I'm in support of the suggestion you made at our last meeting where we would put the surplus after the $50,000 that goes to the taxpayers into the capital reserve.
All right. Comments, discussions, what else is on everybody's mind? We have Megan that's saying anything over the 150 goes to our capital reserve.
What would that have been this year?
This year, it would have been the 2 point,
Oh, the entire,
yeah.
yeah, it was about 2.2. But that was after the 500,000.
So it
It
would have been total
2.7.
about 2.7. And then we had some discussions previously that potentially, we could utilize that towards the bond if the bond is passed in future years, potentially, and you were going to get some clarification on that for us?
I would definitely want to get clarification, but it would seem to be this is land acquisition and the bond is funded.
Okay.
So I'll just say that's where my head is still at right now.
I, in theory, like the idea of that. I just have a concern about how much that's going to impact the taxpayers that are already assuming that the bond gets approved, that they're already going to be paying for that, and then this would be additional that they wouldn't get back. So I just need to know really like what that could potentially equate to. You had said, we had talked that, what's typically the amount that gets sent back to taxpayers? Because 2.2 or whatever is unusual, correct?
This is the most we've ever, typically, last time we asked, it was around that 600 to 700,000 is on average what we underrun in our budget.
Yeah, we've been in that realm. I'd say though over the past 6 years, it's close to $1 million a year on average. We have some years where we've been able to return quite a bit, and so that ups that amount. So our returns have been anywhere from 673,000 in 2018, and then we had the surrounding years, 2017 and 2019, 712 to 772. Then we get into 2020 and 2021. We had 1.3 million in 20, 1 million in 21, and then 2.2 last year. This year from the last fiscal year.
Would that surplus maybe be affected by the extra funding that we had through COVID and through ESSER funding?
Yes.
And we don't have that funding now, so we'd be back down to that, hypothetically, we'd be back down to that average that we were seeing prior to.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
in fact, we had an odd year last year because we not only had an expense surplus, we also had a significant revenue surplus. So we had both sides contributing to what we were able to give back.
I do think on the ESSER grants and that kind of thing, a lot of those grants, not to the extent that we're going to have this past year, but there are still some grants that are going to be kicking around for this next year. I think there's two different things. One is, if the bond passes, do we still do a capital reserve? And I would be against that. I think if the bond passes for the new school, I think we keep the 200,000 in, and we don't ask for anything more in the capital reserve. And the second part is, I feel uncomfortable. I don't think we're going to have $2.2 million, but if the voters are turning down basically $1 million a year for the addition, I don't feel comfortable keeping more than $1 million a year, putting an additional $1 million into the capital reserve.
Can we do a not to exceed?
Well,
We usually put a whole number down,
right, then we just put a whole number down there.
but would we be able to do, well, let's hypothetically say we have another good year, we have some good revenue, and we have $2 million in surplus again this year. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I would agree with Carl. I can't foresee going over $1 million max and feeling right about it.
I'm kind of in the same boat there. Like I get why we'd want to do that, and it makes sense in ways, but I think it's going to be a hard pill to swallow. I think for taxpayers.
And I know the kind of the heart of this is to utilize it potentially for the renovation project, but we all know on the board, we can't bind future boards, so we can't say, hey, they're gonna do this.
Nope.
So we gotta be cautious with that, but yeah, my head's right around that not to exceed $1 million mark.
I know for me as a board member, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, I'll be here come July or August of next year. That I would be, interested in whatever is in the capital reserve above that 200,000 to also put towards the project if it passes. And then I also know if it doesn't pass, we have some space constraints there that are going to be a hefty, toll. So we need to let's say $1 million, right, is going to be woefully needed for some space over there. And we're going to make, if it doesn't pass, we're going to have to be making some, drastic calls as far as where do we put that money? Is it classrooms? Is it the entryway? Is it, where is it going to be placed? And I know I think I know where you're going to go, but 700,000, which we have right now. Again, I'm saying if the renovation project does not pass, $700,000 is not going to buy us a classroom or two. We already know that.
Right.
Last year, it was 1 million for 2 classrooms. I want to say, I forget exact numbers, but it was upwards of $1.8 million for those 2 classrooms. So another $1 million will get us to maybe 2 classrooms, maybe not, escalations, etc. So that's where my mind is, we need as much as possible because we're going to have some major space constraints there. And I'm also interested that if it does pass, let's just say it does, whatever we decide, I know as a board member come August, I would be interested in putting whatever that money is towards that bond to reduce the bond payment there to then decrease for taxes as well. We can't bind the board that's going to be here in August, but I know as this one board member, I would be interested in voting to allocate whatever we decide tonight, if the bond passes, to that bond to reduce that bond payment as well. So that's where my mind's at with whatever we decide, whether it's another 500,000, it's $1 million, it's everything. So that's where my mind is at, to reduce taxes ultimately. And since the voters approved, if they approve our operating, they've approved our operating budget. So they've already said, here's, look at the exact number for this year. The voted budget, $32,189,534 that we're in right now. They've already approved that money. They've already said, we'll approve you up to that amount. So we have that allocated to us right now. So whatever we underrun, that's why I'm saying they've already approved that for us. Yes, traditionally we've given a lot back. This year we gave 2.2 million plus back. But again, I just look at they've allotted this to us to be, stewards of this. But
There's no guarantee they're going to pass the capital reserve.
no guarantee they're going to pass the operating budget. There's no guarantee they're going to pass.
Well, no,
anything.
my point is, if they don't pass the addition, I want to make sure that we are taking a step in the right direction with the capital reserve. And I think that's why you need a cap on it.
Or could we raise that first 150 of surplus to 200 or 250, and then everything on top of that we keep? So we're ensuring that we're giving a little bit more back to the taxpayers, and then we're keeping on top of that. Just as a suggestion.
I think I'd rather go the other way. I'd rather have 150 and then cap it at $1 million over, because I think we're more likely, given what we've done in the past, to get more money in the capital reserve that way.
We've talked talked, I think, last meeting about potentially doing like a, if the renovation passes, then we would keep this much for the capital reserve. If it doesn't pass, we would keep this much. Can we do that?
Yes. It gets complicated.
Then I'd like to make the motion to say that then. I'd like to make the motion, and we can reword this, but let's just say what it would be if the renovation project passes, then to allocate some dollar amount, I don't know what that is yet. If it does not pass, then I would look to allocate anything over the 150,000 to capital reserve.
I think I would be okay with that because they're not getting a burden here. They're getting, so it's almost not like getting them double.
Is that possible to word it that way?
It is. I think it's complicated to me, and I'm just trying to find the best way to word that that's not going to be overly confusing to the voters. I want to try and make it as simple as possible.
Right.
Not as simple, but as straightforward as possible. So,
And I think the dollar amount that I have in my head right now for that, if it does pass, is about that 300,000. That brings us to $500,000 in the capital reserve. That covers, roofs, that covers septics, because I know we're pushing the septic off, so that we've heard that the septic could be anywhere from, we've had 200,000 up to 500,000. So that covers us for those up to that big failure that we might have. So if I was to make a motion, it would be if Article 2 passes, then it's 300,000 to be placed in the school renovation, reconstruction, and capital improvement capital reserve fund. And if it does not, then anything over the 150,000 is placed in that fund.
Can I second that? Your motion?
Not yet.
Oh,
I want
okay.
to ask Jeff this. This may be something that we make a motion and then get legal's take on it, and we may have to come back and modify this a bit before our meeting in the beginning of January.
yeah, I'd like to get the substance down and we can get
Right.
the form maybe correct. So the article itself would start out: shall the voters of the Hampton School District raise and appropriate up to, and this is going to be the first condition,
300,000
to be placed in the School Renovations, Reconstruction, and Capital Improvement Fund established in 2006, with such amount to be transferred from the June 30, 2023 unassigned fund balance in excess of $150,000 available for transfer on July 1, 2023.
if
However,
Article 2 does not pass.
yes,
I think,
If Article 2
or
does
should-
pass,
should
should Article 2 pass? Question mark. If Article 2 does not pass, then shall the voters of the Hampstead School District raise and appropriate all surplus budget, so all surplus budget to be placed in the school renovation, reconstruction, and capital improvement capital reserve fund established in 2006, with such amount to be transferred from June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance surplus in excess of 150,000 available for transfer on July 1st, 2023.
I think in substance, I get it, and I think it will be up to us to see if there's a way to make sure that that's as succinct and
Yep.
clear as possible. But if you're in agreement with that, I'm going to ask Melissa. Is the motion
That would be my motion.
clear?
I can write
I'm
that
not
out.
sure.
I can write that out if you'd like.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay. I think I'd like to I want to make that motion.
Yep.
With the caveat that we may have to have a special meeting to revise based on legal's response.
You can approve in terms of sub. You'll have to say it's to form. Is the form by your motion? Say that we're approving this in substance, and then the form can follow.
Yep.
I think that if we were to, if Article 2 passed, but this did pass, we would be talking about a swing return to $1 million last year, 150 or quite a swing in tax rate.
Yep.
So I'm just putting that out there.
Yep.
I don't know what our surplus situation is going to be. I've not had, I mean, literally the windfall that we had last year.
Well, that's why I was asking that question. What is what exactly did that, how exactly did that impact taxpayers, right? Because that's part of the questions, but, you know, they'd be paying that here. We have to get the renovation done. We have to figure out how to do it.
Aaron,
So
can
it's,
we get a second and then have discussion on it?
sure.
Appreciate
I
it.
thought she already seconded it.
I don't think so. She was asking if that was my motion, but getting close, almost there. Would anybody like to second?
Second.
All right, now let's ask your question. There we go.
Well, I don't know if I can reword it again, so.
Tax impact was $1.65 based on the 2.2 that we sent back. Maybe a little more.
$1.62 per thousand.
Yeah, about $1. I'd say about $1.65 per thousand. I'd have to plug in the exact amounts, but it's pretty close.
That's unusual that we would have that much in there.
Unreasonably unusual, yeah. And again, it was not driven by expense, it was driven by expense and revenue surplus, which is very unusual.
So we would be basically looking at, so if we normally give back $1 million, say, we'd be still looking at, they'd be paying potentially $1 more if they did the renovation, or $1 more
Right.
if we did this. So it's going to equal out.
Right. Yeah, in my mind, it's that money, you know, the 700,000 plus, let's just say, you know, if on average it's the 700, 800,000, that gets us, you know, we can't get too far ahead of ourselves, but we really do need to get some classrooms.
Absolutely.
If it's one classroom, two classrooms, whatever that looks like, we really have to get after that, in my mind. You know, not voting, you know, speaking for the entire board, that's where my mind's at.
Yeah,
That's why it's that drastic increase now.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with it. I just don't think we can do both.
No, that's why
Yeah,
my
so I
motion.
think
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah, it's got to be an if then.
All right. Any other discussion then? Any other questions about how that's worded or the intent?
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm torn between, if the voters don't approve $1 million per year for the addition, then they're approving, are they going to approve $1 million off one-off year, maybe possibly for the capital reserve? I don't know. The flip side of that is, if we make that warrant article too complicated, people may just vote it down because they don't understand it, which worries me a lot too. If we put money into the capital reserve, right? So say if we get 2.2 million again next year, can we pull it back out and return it to the taxpayers, or is it just in the capital reserve?
Once it's in the capital reserve, it would be expended or withdrawn for the purposes
Okay.
of the capital reserve fund.
Okay.
And then, as I say, to me, it's, if it doesn't pass, there's a woeful need there. We've heard that echoed many times, repeated again tonight from the consultants on where the space is, and we know that there's a space issue.
I
And we-
totally agree with that.
Yep.
I am totally on board that we need the,
Yep.
the renovation, and I'm like, I want it to pass.
Yep.
I think it is a somewhat different environment than it was last year.
100%. Agreed.
And yeah, I want at least one of them to pass. I think that's one of
Right.
my biggest things.
Well, so if the capital reserve, if we did that and the capital reserve didn't pass, would it default to what it is currently?
No, it doesn't pass, nothing increases, stays this.
It's what I mean.
Yeah, it stays
the
at
same, like,
700,000
so we
what
would
we're
get-
at.
Okay,
Meaning the 700,000 we have today, after voting, it would be 700,000.
okay.
No increases, no decreases. We'd have 700,000 there.
I'm good with anything over the 150 now. I'm assuming that,
Right.
yeah, if the warrant doesn't pass for the addition.
All right.
So just to clarify, before we take a vote, if warrant Article 2, the bond, passes,
300,000 into capital reserve.
and then if it does not pass, 150, and then everything over.
Anything over 150,000 goes into capital reserve.
Perfect.
Okay. Any last discussion before I call a vote? All right. All approved? All right, thank you all. Last one, coup de grace there is Article 8, General Acceptance of Reports. Shall the Hampstead School District accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2022 annual report? Majority vote required. Have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All right, all approved? All right,
So Chairman Smith, can I say something?
yes.
Okay, so for Articles 2 through 8, the board just approved them as presented, but I don't think that actually means they get moved to warrant. So I would suggest, if you guys would entertain it, maybe just a simple motion to advance Articles 2 through 8 as approved to the 2023 warrant.
Yes.
But
Motion.
but two of them we approve for substance, right?
No,
Okay, so
Just my point, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is that you've approved them, but for what? We've got to build the warrant. So I just want to make sure to cover all your bases that you have some language in there saying that they get moved to warrant. So you can kind of play with that suggested motion that I just put out there, but that's kind of
Yep.
the gist of it.
Yep. So I'll motion that Articles 2 through 8 get moved to warrant for 2023 voting.
A second for discussion.
All right. Second for discussion.
Should it include something along the lines that pending legal review for the verbiage?
Okay. I will amend my motion to add the language pending legal review.
Okay.
Thank you. Still get a second?
Still second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
nope, that was my discussion.
All right. All approved?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that, Melissa. All right. Mr. Dowd, we'll talk about 2022, 2023 financial budget transfers.
I have a transfer, which you see article to conduct a transfer requiring for transfer. The source of this, just to show the platform there, is that we have a staff member, speech language path, who we budgeted in salary, who we need to now hire him to do services. So I'll be requesting that we, in the amount of $92,853. So I'm requesting the transfer from line 100, 2152, 112, 69, 31, 1, which is our speech salary line, which I will ensure Melissa has, to the 100, 1200, 330, 60, 31, 1, which is our student services, outside services line. And the amount of that is
$92,853. Thank you.
and we'll confirm, I'll confirm to you on the account. So that's the transfer as proposed. I don't know if someone would like to make the motion as described.
Just, it's coming from where again?
Salaries,
Salaries, okay.
speech salary to student services, outside services, to hire outside.
I'll make the motion to transfer $92,853 from the speech salaries to the outside student services account fund.
Second that.
All right, any discussion, questions? I think that makes sense. I appreciate the explanation. But, all right, all approved? All right.
And you approve that, I'm hoping we will have the speech language path well qualified in the inbox for hire.
Good.
I waited until now to make the transfer, and that's just how things happen. So
Yep.
One could only hope.
I'll be back next month if that's the case.
Yeah.
Back.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, we're going to go to policy second reading. We do have one policy here for second reading, which is policy GBCD, background investigation and criminal history records check, This was last revised in 2007, and it says language taken from NHSBA sample policies for restructuring definitions at the beginning, adding provisions to substitute designees and revisions to clarifying, prohibiting employee any applicant charged pending disposition or convicted of a Section 5 offense. So I don't know if there's any questions for those on the policy committee. We did discuss this at the last meeting, but after further reading, board members, be looking for a motion to accept policy GBCD. I'll second that. Any discussions?
Did you have the second on that?
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was me. Any questions, comments? All right, all approved?
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, next, coming around third base here, almost getting done to the end. Board comments, correspondence, starting all the way to my left, Dr. Hubner.
No.
Mr. Giard. Let's see, for mine, a couple of building committees, some with Mr. Giard, some without. Definitely some really great discussions and appreciating community members that are part of that. Tonight I did attend the Jingle Bell shop at the Central School, which was the first time I'd been there. It was the first time my wife had been there, who surprisingly, she's been in the school district for many, many years. Highly impressed with what the PTSA put on. Kids were loving it. There were long lines, just like you would expect at the mall, but at Central School. The kids were having a blast, so it was great to see the strong community involvement at the Central School. Just like at Santa's breakfast. I also attended Santa's breakfast, and I did not sit on Santa's lap, but my kids loved Santa there, and the breakfast was really great. Really appreciated Mom's Club, what they did there, again, utilizing the space, which was heavily utilized. There was, I don't even know we have that many kids in this district that I saw there. So that was really great. And lastly, even though I did not attend this, I'm only a few years away from this, I appreciated the setup that was done here at the middle school for the senior citizens dinner. And it looked really great. I heard that it was a lot of fun, and a lot of members of the community came and saw the middle school. So appreciate everything that went into that as well. So that's what I got.
I don't have anything.
I do. I actually volunteered and helped at the senior dinner. So it was awesome. And there were a lot of students that were helped, and they got a lot of kudos from the guests. So that was great. So thanks for everybody for that. And I'm going to wish my daughter a happy 18th birthday.
Nice shout out, Mom. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your family to give you up for tonight. So appreciate that for sure, Aaron. All right.
Did I put that in the minutes too?
I think it's minute worthy. So I feel like I should be celebrating because I did all the work.
Amazing. All right, I'll turn this over to Mr. Thompson for the consent agenda. And we're only about an hour and a half after what we said, so apologies. I know you've been waiting for this, so appreciate it.
We can keep it brief. Under personnel report, we have one item that is a intent to retire at the conclusion of the 2022-2023 school year, and that is for fifth grade math teacher Karen Dunn, who has been in the district for 32 years. Yeah.
Dunk.
Yeah, Dunk.
Hey, Doug.
I'm taking that. Wow, that's amazing. 32 years. Yeah, I know that she's usually one of the last ones standing when we go through how many people have been here 5, how many 10, how many 20. So make the motion with strong regrets because Ms. Dunn has done a lot in the school district, and a lot of families have been positively influenced by Ms. Dunn. So, so I accept and make the motion with regrets.
Second that. And thank her for all of her years of service and what she's done for the district and the students and families.
That's 32 years is a long time, and I'm very appreciative. So can't even imagine 32 years. So that said, looking approved. All right, thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Best wishes. Going on now to the superintendent's report.
So tomorrow we have our next scheduled early release day. This is actually an opportunity for our all of our staff members to receive mandatory training in bullying prevention and intervention. We also received notice from the Department of Education that we were the recipients of approximately $64,000 of grant funds as part of the SAFE grant. Those were monies that were set aside to help schools make needed improvements to safety and security. At the central school, that's $35,000 for cloud-based building access control. And at the middle school, same thing, cloud-based access control for $29,000. Essentially what that does is it allows for the administration to be able to monitor the building entry and exit ways, and to be able to lock, unlock, and monitor those doors at all times from a remote location. So really cool technology, much needed, and again, fits with the priority in the grant, which was access control, the ability to enter a school building. As Mrs. Milbury pointed out, we moved to electronic report cards for the middle school. So the big question is, where are we with the central school? And we deferred first quarter, I think for many of the reasons that Mrs. Milbury indicated, which is the access to the remote report card is done through PowerSchool. Middle school parents, they are, many of them are fluent with going into PowerSchool and looking at student grades. That's not necessarily the case at the elementary school. So we thought it's sort of a phased approach. So it is our intention this upcoming report card period to do electronic report cards for HCS as well. So we will have fully moved to an electronic report card model. Also, there's been a lot of really cool events going on at both schools. One that occurred yesterday was Kevin Skarupa from WMUR News was here to talk to our third graders about the weather. Very, very cool. I learned a lot of really interesting things, including there's actually over 50 different types of clouds, which I was not aware of. So I feel like my elementary school experience, I was lied to a little bit.
I think I said three, like cumulus, nimbus,
I think I can name
stratus.
more. But it was just very engaging. He's a great presenter, really rooted in a lot of science that our kids are actually learning in the classroom. I do want to challenge him a little bit, because he did get the kids' hopes up in saying that there's the possibility of a snow day on Friday. I've looked at several weather forecasts, and I just don't see what he's seeing. So
I'm going to bet on him, not you.
okay,
Apologies
all right.
there.
I will take that bet with you, Mr. Smith. And then finally, today we had 4 of our staff members who have completed their certification as NAMI Connect trainers. We had discussed NAMI last year. So NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We have formed a partnership with that organization. And last year they helped the district to satisfy the requirement that all staff receive 2 hours in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention training. So we've sort of taken it to the next level, which is now we want to train our own folks to be able to train our staff. So we had, and it's a pretty intensive training, and it's actually a national certification. We had 4 staff members who are now certified NAMI Connect trainers. That's Julie Barbeck, Bob Mayu, Michelle Crissa, and Melissa Clay. So again, we value the partnership with NAMI. They are, I had conversations with Ann Duckla, she's the trainer for NAMI, and she said this is really an amazing group of staff, and she's very interested to see the work moving forward. The next phase, when we look at sort of 3.0, would be some of the training that we're doing with our students. So the possibility of actually getting some of our students trained in age-appropriate response to suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. So, I'll entertain any questions that folks might have.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I find it is really great that the WMUR weatherman came to the school. I feel like those are the moments that our children remember, you know, and it's great to see we're connecting what they're learning with life outside of the school building walls. So I did see the clip. I didn't watch it live, but I did see, the clip shared on Facebook. Yeah, so I really appreciate all the effort that went into making that happen.
And what I found interesting was, you know, the content was, I really thought at a very deep level. This wasn't just, you know, the weatherman coming in and talking about clouds. Like, they really were looking at a lot of science, and you can tell that Mr. Skarupa really has done his research in terms of like what third grade next generation science standards are, because you could see, I was with Mrs. Tomaselli, having a conversation with Mrs. Tomaselli about the presentation, and, you know, just to see the work that WMUR does, like community outreach to schools, really aligns curriculum-wise with the standards that we're teaching in our classroom. So. Oh yeah, also another field trip we had was the third grade class trip. They go swimming is it the Salem Athletic Club? And so there's a little contention between Mr. Dowd and myself, because last year I received an invitation to chaperone that trip. Thought I would be invited again this year, but Mr. Dowd got the SAU chaperone call this time. So, but definitely another great experience for our students. It's just, again, really nice to get back into the routine of speakers, visitors, field trips. So a lot of really great stuff going on in our schools.
And I believe, Ms. Mulberry, there was a field trip today also, correct?
Yes. See, when I write my report, that hadn't happened yet. I didn't think about it. Yes, our girls basketball team's got to go to DC and watch a game, get autographs from the DC women's basketball team. They had an amazing day.
That's the nice thing I know. Good. This is really important.
Our girls basketball teams and cheerleaders were able to go down, arranged by Coach Ingraham and Arroyo. They rode a coach bus actually down to Boston College to the women's basketball game. Got to sit courtside today, see the game, get on the Jumbotron and meet some of the players after the game, got some autographs and had an amazing day. So it's really, really fun trip. Thank you for reminding me about that, Mr. Smith.
No, I got reminded today with some pictures, so that's why I knew about. So it is good to see the field trips are happening again, and I know a lot of students that experience alone is making a difference. Anything else there, Mr. Thompson?
That's all I got.
All right. Maybe next time we can bring up to the board the website with the grants.
Oh yeah, no, real quick, you know, we had chatted at previous meetings, you know, as the board is aware, you know, we've been, you know, pretty aggressive with looking for grant opportunities to help offset the overall tax impact. So, you know, we had discussed like creating a website that allowed just for the community to see, you know, what those grants are, what the type of money is involved, what the requirements are. So that's live on our website now. It's definitely a work in development. Like, we sat down as a team and said, all right, let's go through what have we received. And so we're going to continue to update that website. There are grants we've received in the last year that you will not find on there, but they will be up there shortly, including the SAFE grant that we just received. There's information about that grant on the website. So
That's awesome. I really appreciate that. I think it's good for transparency and, again, bringing down the overall tax impact. So great job.
I feel like that's under About Us on the website.
it is, yeah. And we can put it on, tag it on the front page. So
Yeah, I think it'd be good just to send that out in one of your newsletters.
absolutely.
So, right. I believe we don't have any other business. We're not going into non-public. So it is now 10:05 p.m. and I appreciate we'll adjourn now. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a